Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Hope you're all well. For some reason, there we go. For some reason, I wasn't able to see the counts. Anyway, today's stream is just going to be sort of an open Q&A for anybody who wants it. I'm not sure how many do. A couple of people asked me to just do one, which is just Q&A. I guess because they sort of feel uncomfortable that I present a topic, just for contemplation, and then some people, I guess, are a bit they don't want to come on and just speak about anything else, even though people do come on and ask about other things. But I guess they would rather have something dedicated for Q&A. Anyway, so we do have a couple of questions in the comments. India was asking about the scholar in Saudi Arabia, which of course I'm sure she means Hassan Farhan al-Maliki. Is he still in jail? Yes, unfortunately he's still in jail. Ridiculous long time now. Before there used to be updates where they would set a court date, and then when it comes, they would delay it. We'll say, okay, no, not now, we'll delay it for 3 months, and then again after 3 months. And it went on like this for years. And then there was a time where his family didn't even know where he was. They couldn't get in contact with him at all. And recently there hasn't been much of an update, unfortunately. Both him and his son are still being held. His crime, well, of course, they're just charging him with a number of silly things, like possessing books which are illegal in Saudi Arabia. Mainly it was that he's been charged with attacking the fundamentals of the religion and things like this. Possession of, like I said, books that that were deemed banned or illegal in Saudi Arabia. A bunch of other things, a lot of these sectarian kind of things. But in reality, of course, what it was is he was the best voice against the sort of like the Salafi, the Najdi Salafis. I mean, he knew them back to front. He knew them very well, and so they did. He was very critical of them, and he was known for that. And nobody knew them inside and out. And the things which are part and parcel of the Salafi sort of mentality and where it comes from and its roots, and has analyzed it properly the way he has. And so they just wanted to shut him down. He'd been arrested a few times before that on silly charges. Even he was charged of. He mentioned this in a very funny way, where one time the authorities took him in and they started questioning him about what he thinks of Umar al-Bashir, who used to be the leader of Sudan. He was like he took over by military coup in the end. And he, of course, has nothing to do with Umar al-Bashir, right? So he was like completely confounded. Why would I have anything to do with Umar al-Bashir? But of course, because at the time Osama bin Laden was hiding out in Sudan, and so what the fanatics will always do is they will use whatever the political authority at the time is scared of. They will use that and label their opponents upon that in order to get the state to attack their opponents. So they were just saying he was this. Then sometimes they would call him a Houthi from Yemen, who are Saudi were against. They're fighting against the whole war. And sometimes they accuse him of being an agent of Iran, right? When Saudi and Iran are basically very antagonistic to each other. So whatever it is, they just pile up all this nonsense. In the end, they don't have anything against him, real against him. And in fact, the whole country around the country. Just the de facto leader, Mohammed bin Salman, has basically done a 180 and said what Hassan Farhan and Malik has been saying all this time. You see, he's just suddenly came out and told everybody, no, we can't accept hadiths for our deen, right? Because it's hadiths were written down, so many years after the Prophet, right? And so the only hadiths that we could accept as meaningful for our deen should be the mass transmitted hadiths. And of course, there aren't any. Or if there are, you could say there's just a very few handful. And so when he started saying all of this, people were saying, look, the best person for this kind of project, you've got locked up in the jails. But of course, they're not going to release people like that, because it's all about the challenging of authority. There are women have now been allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia for so many years, but there are still women in prison now who protested that they wanted the right to drive. And that's why they were put in prison, okay? And now women are allowed to drive, but they're still in there, because at the time they protested, right? Anyway, all right, we have somebody backstage. I'll bring you on. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. It is me who gave you the comment. So
that's right.
Yes. So thank you. First of all, it's not very normal for me, if people know me, to come to Muslim platforms, because I have had very bad experiences, how they have been disrespecting me. But I would say that you are probably one of my, you can say, nice Muslim platform, because you have maybe checked my profile, but you have never disrespected me. You have always been very kind in responding my questions. For that, I appreciate that.
You're welcome, of course.
Yeah, but you have been very kind. You have always been kind. So that is what I appreciate about you. And that is why I decided to come on this channel.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And I will also be talking about this scholar who is in jail on my channel, because I find it to be wrong. I have nothing against Islam like that, of course, beside the fact what the certain teachings says, but I would like to ask you that later. But I would say that it is very sad to see that when a scholar, he tries to reform. When I mean reform, he tries to show or want to make Islam work with others, that he gets to jail. And the fact that you just said, unless please correct me, you said that he is saying that, I can't remember his full name, so forgive me, I'm saying something like that. That the sheikh, he wants, different hadiths, and he's saying certain hadiths are not valid, but he goes to jail because of that. But the Saudi crown prince, Salman, when he said, I think it was in the news, that he wants to remove 80% of the hadith, it's all right. So that is not fair. I mean, there is a person out there, a sheikh, which, who's, I'm not saying everybody, the sheikhs are perfect, but he is the closest for me. Actually, he's trying to make everyone live together and respect one another, but he goes to jail. And that is what has caught my attention on your channel. But
I mean, it's exactly true. Not only that, but even his son was taken. I mean, it's a big tragedy, especially for his son. I mean, while he was while he was in jail, one of his other sons passed away, of course. And that was a tragedy for the family. And of course, he couldn't go to attend the funeral or anything. But one of his oldest son, Abbas, he had actually gone to USA to study in a university there, in Wisconsin University. And he graduated, and he was, of course, a very happy occasion. He graduated, and he was coming back to Saudi to work and stuff. And he was arrested at the same time as his father, and for no other reason than he retweeted his father's tweets. Basically, that's what it comes down to, And so it's even it's one of those even it's like oppression on top of oppression, where you go after the family of somebody as well, so it's a really, really difficult thing. I mean, like I said, also he's been put in prison a few times before that, this is the longest he's been in, and we just hope that one day he actually just gets out.
One thing I've noticed about this scholar, Sheikh, is that, and I don't mean it literally, it's just a way of speech. One thing I just noticed that came to my mind is like he is throwing certain Maulanas under the bus, in the sense that that is what I think, that maybe they have felt like that, because he speaks from where I'm also listening, that he actually speaks the truth. When it comes to certain Maulanas doing certain things, saying certain things about Islam, and when I hear him, he actually says what many Maulanas scholars don't say. For me, I have been once a Muslim, so I can recognize what this sheikh is saying and give sense to me. He is saying that many sheikhs should say. But one place I got, you can say, thrown down from is when he gave so much, and he gives Hadith so much credit, that I don't understand Quranic Islam. One question that I do have, because I've been watching many of your videos and very lovely videos, but where I really get off track is when he accepts the Hadith. When Quran is actually, because I don't, even as a Muslim, I didn't follow Ibn Kathir tafsir, neither did I follow Hadith. Why? Because Allah says very clearly, many places, after this statement, which other statement would they follow? This is in Arabic also. The statement is written as Al Hadith in Surah 77, Ayah 50. And then people, they go around and making these tafsirs of Quran, when Allah says in Surah 3, Ayah number 7, that nobody knows the interpretation but Allah Himself. And it is the best of tafsir. It says Surah 25, Ayah number 33. So my question is, why is it that the Muslims are following Ibn Kathir's tafsir or hadiths for that sake, when Allah says in Surah 6, Ayah 114 and Ayah 115 that Quran is complete in detail, you cannot get out of it, judge out of it, and you cannot alter Allah's words. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, well, I mean, it's a complicated question. I mean, when it comes to those verses that people like Quranists will use, right? That فَبِأَيِّ حَدِيثٍ بَعْدَهُ يُؤْمِنُونَ, right? Maybe I should actually put up the verses. Give me a second, so that you gave the references, so I just want to be sure we're talking about the same verses. Just give me a second.
No problem.
Let's see. And all right, let me put it like that. Okay, so when it comes to like those arguments, right? That that the Quran is calling itself Hadith in opposition to sort of like narrations and stuff like this. That the Quran says, which Hadith will you accept after this, right? These sort of verses. I found that they're very unique and mostly like the English-speaking, the English-speaking or area or atmosphere or community of Quranists, right? That sort of argument is not really very strong argument. It's not really used by Hassan Farhan al-Maliki himself, for example, right? He does reiterate, so to go back to sort of what you were saying, he does say that if you want, let's throw out all the hadiths, it's fine. Yes, you can throw out every single hadith, right? And the Quran will be more than enough, right, for guidance, to guide you to right action, to Jannah, to God's love. The Quran is more than enough. No, you don't even need all of the Quran. Even a half of it, a quarter of it, a few short surahs, they're enough. Okay, but in the end, when it comes to trying to show people the way to the Quran, right? Sometimes it has to be done by showing them the falsehoods of the things which have wrapped around the Quran, right? And sometimes you have to show the falsehood, which things are false, by comparing them with things which are true. Okay, so the issue of the hadiths, there's many issues of hadiths, of course, but the main issue is that they are not judged according to a real standard, right? Every sect is using their sectarian meter to judge the narrations, right? So the Sunni hadiths, they judge them because they have, and they say that the Sunni narrators are trustworthy, right? That the Ahlul Hadith, the Ahlul Hadith, they became very sectarian, and then they started to just say the people who are trustworthy are only the people who are following our dogmas, or the people who are sort of more on the side of the state, who would not speak against the state, things like this, right? And so of course by that means what happens is certain hadiths and narrations are filtered for themselves, right? They're the very dogmatic subclass of the narrations. Then the Shia would have their own ones, right? They have their own narrators. They say these are the ones who are trustworthy because they follow our dogmas, etc. And so they have their own set of narrations, right? Everybody became sectarian in how they judged the narrations, right? So it quickly changed from just judging if something is true or not. Okay, can we ascertain if this is something which we can attribute back to the Prophet or not, purely objectively, no matter if the narrator is part of our group or not part of our group, right? Without making excuses for liars, and without without rejecting people who seem trustworthy even if we don't like them, right? And then of course there's even an earlier problem than that, which is that the companions themselves, the earlier part of hadith narrating, okay, it was just people speaking, just chatting. It wasn't people like really keeping track of the isnads. People were not actually narrating in that kind of way. All right. I'm gonna be giving some examples in that, hopefully, in my in that part 2 reaction video, which I still need to do. But early on, the narrations were just not like that. People were just speaking and saying, this person said this, right? And they never had actually heard the person say that, just somebody else told them. And you wouldn't know because they don't mention it, and nobody was checking if somebody heard from somebody else or not. Okay, it became very complicated. And then there's an even earlier problem, okay, which is that among the people that the next generation would consider to be Sahaba, among them were hypocrites, right? And among those hypocrites were hypocrites who would be in positions where others would listen to them, as the Quran says. The Quran talks about how some of you Muslim, the believers around the Prophet, they listened earnestly to the hypocrites, and even in the Quran is even addressing the Prophet that, look, when you listen to them, what they say pleases you. Okay, even the Prophet, like what these hypocrites were saying, it would please the Prophet. Okay, it would seem pleasing. Okay, but then among that is other things as well. All right, so you had the hypocrites who were speaking, and what they were saying was being taken by the sincere believers, some of them, and then they would narrate that on, etc. So the point is, it's a very big, convoluted mess, the narrations, but that doesn't mean it can't be sifted to a certain amount. Okay, there are some narrations which is obvious that they are true. Okay, even if the actual hadith doesn't turn out to be true, because it conforms to the Quran, the Prophet definitely said it or something like it. Like, for example, when the Prophet says, alaykum bis-sidq, right? I enjoin upon you to be honest. Okay, this is the hadith we have. Okay, we can accept it because in the end, of course, the Prophet would have spoken about honesty in that kind of way, just as the Quran tells people, kunu ma'as sadiqin, be among the honest people, right? And how, on Day of Judgment, Allah say, this is the day that the honesty will benefit the honest, right? So there are hadiths which are obvious that they're going to be true, right? Because they are a reflection of the Quran and what and the message of it, the principles of it, the main point of it. Then there are hadiths which are obviously wrong, okay? Obviously against the Quran, against what the Prophet has taught, even if they are considered sahih, right? And then what you have left is this whole area which is in between. Okay, you have this big area which is in between, where you judge as best you can with it's more like probability, right? There's a big spectrum of narrations between them. We have this arbitrary thing where we say the hadith can be either sahih or da'if. Okay, and it's a very simplistic, childish way of arranging hadiths, right? Because even if you have a hadith which you say is sahih, you can have another one which is sahih, but they're not the same. One of them could be actually much stronger than the other, even though you're calling them both hadith, both sahih, right? So that it's a relativity, right? It's a spectrum between them. I mean, there should be, by now, really should be a grading system for narrations, which is more numerical, like like a sort of a probability sort of thing, right? Or a statistical measure of them, where you can actually see the different strengths of hadiths, numerically, right? Like a number being like, for example, if you were to take all of the narrations and then establish a mean, a middle, right? What is the middle? And then every other hadith would be, and that middle would be a zero, for example. You'd set that as zero, calibrate it as zero. And then a hadith which is stronger than that by sort of 1 point would be a one, and one which is stronger than that one would be another, etc. You get what I'm saying? That you would actually, order the hadiths, right? So then you can actually see them.
But Quranic Islam, my question is, where does Allah say to follow any other hadith than the Quran itself? Because Surah 7,
no, you don't have to. Yeah, you don't have to. Yeah, you don't have to follow anything other than the Quran. Even the Quran is not. I mean, to gain guidance, right? You don't even need the whole of the Quran, right? So you don't have to follow any hadiths at all, right? The Quran does not say to follow hadiths at all, right? Even all those verses you say, obey the Prophet. Okay, the Prophet is not the narrations, right? Nobody has to trust a single hadith. Nobody has to trust that a single hadith is true. Sorry?
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Because I have been on Quranic pages who are Quranists, just follow Quran. And they have given so many multiple proofs from the Quran itself that do not get out of the Quran, do not judge others from outside the Quran, and Allah forbids that. For example, there is Surah 7. I mean, I was reading it yesterday, and I found there how Allah is specifically, let me hit it up. It says, so I don't say it wrongly, forgive me. I will just read it for you.
Let me bring it up as well. Which number is it? Surah 7, verse...
I will hit it up. Yes, Surah 7, Ayah 3. It is Al-Araf. Ayah 3. Yes. So, my Arabic reading is not that strong. I cannot read it. Once upon a time, I was sharp. But it says, for example, in Surah 7, Ayah 3, the one translation that I have, it says, follow what has been sent down to you from your Lord, and do not take others as guardians besides him. How seldom are you mindful? So it says very clearly that do not follow anybody as a guardian but the God himself, Allah. It says very clearly. So when Muslims, they constantly say, because I was a Muslim once, and when Muslims constantly said, well, Muhammad said that, Muhammad did that, I used to say, listen, what about Allah? Why are you forgetting Allah? Does Allah mean nothing to you? Is it Muhammad that you are following on the Quran? Where is the Quran? Where is the Allah? Why are you not praying to Allah? Why are you not remembering Allah? I never prayed, by the way, 5 times a day, but I prayed to Allah every time I wanted, walking, sitting, before sleeping, because for me, praying was talk to Allah whenever you want to. I didn't find praying to be very much fun, because it was like confining me. So I'm just sharing with you a feeling that I had, and the connection I had with Allah at that point. But I got amazed over certain behavior, Quranic Islam, when I was defending Islam on my Facebook once upon a time. And I openly said, I have never hidden my thoughts and ideas. I said, listen, I'm sorry, but circumcision is not part of Islam. That is wrong. Allah created beings perfect. Allah says it in the Quran, I made you perfect. So why are you doing the circumcision? That was one point that I mentioned. Second thing I said is, Allah never says follow any other book than the Quran itself. And I was actually called a kafir because of these things. But that is not the reason I left, by the way. But the thing is, these are the things that is happening out there. And I, from outside, I'm just baffled by that what Allah says in the Quran, just the good things, just the simple orders that he's giving in the Quran, they're not following. They're following the Maulanas, they're following these scholars who are saying stuff outside the Quran, the wrong things. Why is it happening? Why is it that people follow something that Allah doesn't even say in the Quran? I don't understand that. And I'm saying it from outside. And I mean zero disrespect here.
Yes, I understand. No, and I completely agree with you. I mean, why this happens? It's just a long history. In the end, people are following the religions as they've been brought up with, right? Their forefathers in religion, right? It's not about um, it's not often about what God has said or not. Yeah, it's not even about what they think the prophet has said. Really, this is just something that they've inherited, and they see it as a mass of thing which is correct, and they just defend it. And then they are given arguments to defend it, which they don't, they haven't come up with themselves. They don't think of them deeply, and then they do that, and so it becomes this antagonistic way to other people who would question it, right? Anybody who questions it, no, we're going to we're going to just defend it, right? No matter what. So there isn't much of a justification. There is some, which is that when they say that what the Prophet said, the Prophet explains the Quran, for example, right? So you've heard this a lot, right? That what the Prophet has to do is explain the Quran, right?
Yes,
And the
all of
Quran by itself, and the Quran by itself is not, it's not. It just has the general ideas, and you need the details, and you wouldn't be able to do this or that or the other about the Quran. So you have these, okay? They're given these arguments, right? And then there are narrations which come in and do that, right?
But
They say,
Quran also says, but I don't want to misunderstand, but the Quran also says that the Quran, okay, one of the things that confuse me, Quranic Islam, is in Surah 3, ayah number 7, Allah says, certain verses are clear, certain verses are not clear. This is very weird. Then Allah goes further in the Quran, I believe it is Surah 6, ayah 114 or 115. He says, well, the Quran is complete and in detail. What is this? I get confused when I read that.
I understand because look, to be honest, I think that sort of a lot of the Quranist arguments, right? They're pretty weak. I mean, the Quranist movement suffers, I think, from a sort of a reaction towards the traditional, right? So there's this reactionary thing to it. So there was, like you just said, right? They would say that the Quran is fully detailed. It says it's fully detailed. It doesn't actually say that, right? The Quran doesn't say it's
Yes.
fully detailed. I know the translations will say that, right? But the actual word just isn't that, right? تفصيل لكل شيء, etc. And I know these verses, right? What it's really saying is it's categorizing things, right? The things are being categorized. فصل. I don't know if you have this word in your culture, the الفصل الأول, الفصل الثاني, right? The first class, second class, right? So even in schools,
so Quran is not
right?
complete. So Quranic Islam, Quran is not complete. Do I understand that correctly?
No, it doesn't mean that it's not complete, right? It is what it's supposed to be, right? So when you say to something, for example, is it perfect or is it no? These are the wrong questions to go about it. The Quran, for example, is not the perfect book, right? It's not intended to be, right? It's not supposed to be that. God didn't send it to be a perfect book, right?
Really? God, I'm loving your comments. You are the most honest person, for now at least, that I have. Biggest compliment I've ever given a Muslim, and it's from the bottom of my heart. I mean it sincerely.
No
And
problem.
one Quranic Islam, I'm going to say it very, very openly that I would love to have you on my channel. I would love to show the public that there are people who speak the way you have just spoken. Please continue.
I mean, it's not. Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, it's not supposed to be perfect, right? The Quran wasn't supposed to be a perfect. If God had wanted to send a book which would be perfect, right? All right, it will be something that yeah, it will be something that would anybody just reading it, they would convert. You wouldn't even need the whole book. You would need maybe just a couple of verses, and that's it. And it says that, okay? The Quran says that. لو شئنا لأنزلنا آية فظلت أعناقهم لها خاضعين. If we had wanted, we could have sent down just one verse, one ayah, okay, which would have made everybody's necks bowed in submission, right? But that isn't what it's supposed to be, right? That isn't what it's supposed to be. The Quran fits into the very purpose of this world, right? The very purpose of this world is what? Ibtila, right? We are here to be tested for ibtila, to see, God will to sift out, the muttaqeen from the non-muttaqeen, right? The good from the bad, the chaff from the wheat, right?
So
This dunya is like that, and the Quran fits into that. Yeah.
So if Quran is not perfect, it's not here to be perfect, then how come Islam consider or wants the people to be perfect, to be able to do the right thing, if the Quran is not perfect enough to guide the people well enough?
No, I mean, so again, it comes down to this idea of perfection, right? So if you to talk about, when people say a book from God is perfect, okay, generally what they think in themselves, in their minds, that this book is like just the miracle of miracles, that there's, that sort of thing. Even when it comes to the eloquence of the Quran, right? People talk about there's nothing more that could ever be more eloquent. No, the Quran is not. It doesn't say that about itself. It's not supposed to be that. In fact, the Quran is being made easy deliberately, right? The vocabulary of the Quran is actually very, very low, right? It's very simple. It
It is
doesn't
for
put a lot of
everyone.
words.
So you
Yeah.
mean to say that Quran is for everyone to understand? You don't have to be a scholar to understand Quran,
Yeah,
and
you
it's
don't. You
correct?
don't. There is depths in the Quran, of course, right? But the main things are guidance, right? Which is what the Quran is supposed to be. It's supposed to be hudan lil muttaqin, right? Guidance for the people who have taqwa, right?
I have a question.
People who have, yeah.
Sometimes when Muslims, they say, because when however you may look upon it, whether I'm criticizing it or whatever, but when I say, well, Islam is not that wonderful, or I say anything and I'm not saying in a disrespectful way, I just ask
Mm.
a question. Why is it that the Muslims, they say to me, it's such a dialogue, they always say, you were never a real Muslim. Why do
Yeah,
they say
again, it's just look. I mean, I would sort of like just sort of ignore those sort of things, sort of have a little bit of pity for it, because it's a silly thing to do, right? It's just a way to be dismissive, a way to put somebody down. That's all it is, right? I mean, don't don't dwell on that too much, right?
no, no,
I mean,
no.
you were a Muslim. Somebody who's saying that is just somebody who doesn't know what else to say, right?
Yeah.
It just comes down to that, really. They don't know what else to say to you. And they get agitated, they get flustered, annoyed, so they will say these kind of things. It's not, don't take it seriously.
No,
Um,
no. Yeah.
there's no thought coming. I mean, there's no thought coming into it. There's no real reason why they would say that, other than just to be spiteful or vindictive, or to put you down, to dismiss you. That's what it comes down to, right? Uh, there's nothing real behind that. If you try to sometimes analyze why some people do things that they do, which are wrong, you'll find that sometimes there's no real reason behind it. People sometimes don't even know why they do things.
Yeah. Quranic Islam, would you like to explain one ayah from the Quran? It is something that
Yeah.
really hits me. And that is something I realized when I was studying Islam in the sense that I was reading the Quran, not listening to Maulanas, and I bumped into
Mm.
the Quranic translation, Surah Nisa,
Yeah.
ayah 34, the wife beating. It doesn't say
Mm.
how you should beat your wife, and it doesn't, and it also says that you can beat her just based on ill conduct, that if you
Mm.
sense ill conduct. Why
Yeah.
is it? What do you think about this surah and ayah? I mean,
Yeah.
is it something you would say is real? Because I mean, it exists there, we cannot say it's not real, but
Mm.
what do you make out of it?
Yeah. I mean, this is a surah which I've mentioned a number of times. I actually want to make a number of videos of it. I've explained it actually, in fact, just now. Maybe she's listening or not, but just recently, over the last couple of days, I was explaining it privately to a woman. There's a number of people, contact me and ask me to explain it for them, and I have, and so far, nobody's said to me that that's just wrong or anything. They come away, alhamdulillah, with somewhat understanding of it. But generally, I've shied away from speaking about it like fully, just because right now I see the world is very gender crazy, if you know what I mean, right? People are losing their heads over the issues of gender and this, and now we have also the LGP,
Yeah.
Q, etc. And what is a woman? Nobody knows, and I mean these sort of things, right? So I want to explain this in a way because it's simple. In the end, it really is very simple. And in the end, people get they can understand it very fully. But there's some barriers sometimes to it. But let me give you at least the beginning of it, right? Beginning of it. I mean, it's not a complicated thing. It does say hit, by the way. All of those people who say it doesn't say hit, no, it does say hit, right? I mean, it's just, again, these are people who are not thinking of it, and then they're not trying to see if there's any wisdom in it, right? People who just say, they try to like explain it away. Okay, but let me give you like the first part of it, the beginning of it, where it says, رجال قوامون على النساء. Men are in charge of, maintainers, etc., that sort of thing, in authority, basically, right, upon women, right? First of all, this is it's not a command, right? It's not ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, or you who believe, let your men be in charge of women, or qawamun ala nisa. It doesn't say فَلْيَكُنْ and رِجَال قَوَامٌ. It's just a statement of how things were at the time and generally all over the world, right? The traditional gender roles, right? Where the men are generally in charge, right? The head of the household, the leader of the family. Okay, الرجال قوامون على النساء. Okay, it's not a command. It's just a statement of how it is. Okay, and the rest of the verse is predicated on that. Okay, you'll see that in a minute. So it says الرجال قوامون على النساء, and it gives some reasons why. Okay, why is it الرجال قوامون? It says بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض, because of what God has given or preferred, some over others, i.e. the men over the women, and because of what they spend of their wealth, right? So these two things mentioned here, right? Now, for this day and age, a lot of this has changed. Okay, so the ideal, for example, is that's being pushed sort of like certainly in the West, certainly globally, certainly by anybody who's liberal, isn't that الرجال قوامون على النساء, right? That isn't something that people strive to anymore. People now want that men and women are qawwamuna upon each other, right? The equality, right? And so that's changed. Okay, that's changed. If the beginning of the verse, the conditions of the beginning of the verse change, okay, the rest of the verse cannot follow, right? So if the ideal now, if what it is that no, the man and the woman there's nobody in charge, they are sort of like just equal, right? Equal in terms of their authority in the household, okay? Then you can't have the rest of this, okay? What this verse is talking about is the traditional gender norms, where the man has a certain degree of authority, and because of the authority, he has some responsibility and also accountability, okay? So he has these three things always go together. To take one away is a injustice on the person. If somebody were to give you responsibility over something, right, but no authority to be able to conduct yourself to fulfill that responsibility, your hands are tied. You can't do anything, right? You can't do anything, right? So with authority, with responsibility must come some authority, right? And also the authority to actually impose that, to push forward the authority. So that's what it comes down to. This is traditional gender roles, okay, and it gives the reasons, right? And then it says, so based on that you have this right, فَالصَّالِحَاتِ, so the righteous women. So what's the relationship of a righteous woman to this sort of situation, right? Where the man is her provider, her protector, right? He's the head of the household, right? So how should she be? Okay, what is a righteous woman in that dynamic, right? To the man like that, right? The man who's the provider, the protector, the head of the household. Okay, so it just says for salihat. So because if that's the case, okay, which in the modern world it isn't, right? But if that's the case, then how should the salihat be? Okay, salihat are what? Are qanitat. So devote. Okay, they're devoted, obedient, devote. This word can be put in both ways, but it's more like this kind of devotion. Okay, they're devoted. Hafizat, protecting, lil ghaib, in absence, in their husband's absence, or when nobody's seeing, all right, when they're alone. Hafizatun lil ghaibi bima hafizallah, whatever God has already had protected in them. Okay, so of course it can be their chastity. It's left open because it's many things can come under here. His wealth, the chastity, the wealth of the household, his wealth, her chastity, her home, right? In some cultures, part of the urf, which is the general custom, is that a woman who's alone, she shouldn't entertain male guests, right? And so if that's part of it, she has to protect against that, right? She has to preserve against that. right? So that's how she should behave, right? And then it says to the men, okay, so what if not? Okay, وَاللَّاتِ تَخَافُونَ نُشُوزُهُنْ. Okay, those who you do not, you fear their nushuz. Now, nushuz, the best English word for it I found is recalcitrance, right? It's this kind of insubordination, this kind of sort of like to be disobedience, which you're deliberately trying to be insubordinate to somebody in authority, right? You're deliberately, trying to push the boundaries, right? It comes from like nashiza is something which is not in its place. Like if you have a series of nails and one nail is sticking out too much, that nail is nashiz. It's not in its place, right? It's out of line. Okay, so it says those who you fear their nushuz, and it gives these three things. These are three different things. They don't have to be in that order. A lot of people first it's not like that. You don't have to speak to them, and then if they don't, then you do this, and if not, then it doesn't say that. It doesn't say thumma, right? It just says these three things. Okay, and then of course at the end it says فَإِنْ أَطَعْنَكُمْ فَلَا تَبْغُوا عَلَيْهِنَّ سَبِيلًا. Okay, now why do you have these three things? Why do you have these three? The first one is obvious, right? فَعِظُوهُنَّ, right? Admonish or speak to them, right? This is generally will work with most women. Okay, this will work with most women, and hopefully the nushuz will pass, right? Whatever the thing where they are stepping out of line. And of course, what is being mentioned here is just when the woman is out of line, right? So the situation here is where she's out of line, right? That's not saying that men can't be out of line as well, but this is just the situation that we're talking about here, right? Women are not always angels. This can happen, okay? The second one, وَهْجُرُوهُنَّ فِي الْمَضَاجِعِ, okay? This is sort of a clue which gives you the part of the next, right? وَهْجُرُوهُنَّ فِي الْمَضَاجِعِ, leave them in their bedrooms. Why is that? This is trying to alleviate the cause of the nushuz. Okay, why is a woman can sometimes be in this kind of way, act this kind of insubordinate, recalcitrant, disobedient way towards her husband, okay, or towards the marriage in general. One of the reasons for that can be is that you have women who have a very high esteem, or they're very enamored with their own sexuality, right? So there are women that sometimes they find, or they think, or maybe they actually do have a hold over their husbands because maybe they are very beautiful, they're very sexually attractive, these sort of things, and because of that, they can get away. They see that they can get away with things, and they do get away with things. They end up doing things, okay? They go beyond limits, beyond borders, beyond, they do certain things, and they think, I can do that. Nothing will happen to me. The husband will not, try to stop me because he's too sort of addicted to me sexually. Do you know what I mean? So there are women like this, right? That they have this very high, they're sort of deluded by their own sexuality. And you can also have men who are like that, right? Now, of course, I don't like these modern words that people use, but the word that people use now, simps, is very apt here, right? A simp, somebody who's sort of like a simp for his wife, because she's so beautiful, she's thin, etc. So he lets her walk all over him, okay? He lets her walk all over him. She does whatever she does whatever she wants, and he doesn't stop it, right? He doesn't stop it. Okay, so this is one of the causes of nushuz. Can be this. One of the causes can be this. Right?
But Quranic Islam, my issue is like, why is it you can beat your wife based on shak? Shak meaning like you suspect in ill conduct. You suspect like she has not done anything yet. That is one of the biggest issues. And the fact that she's committing an ill conduct, let's say that, why is it doesn't go the same way for the men? Because Quranic Islam, that men can also make trouble. They can also come home being drunk. They can also, behave in a way that is very disrespectful towards women. So why has Allah not made a rule for men as well, similarly?
Well, that'll be a different verse, a different conversation. This one is just talking about this situation, right? So it's talking about this situation.
Like, because it does say that if you are, suspecting ill conduct, ill conduct.
So yeah, let me go to that point. Suspecting. It's not about suspecting, right? It's not saying, like you said, shak. It doesn't say والتي تشكون في. It doesn't say that, right? التي تخافون نشوزهن, right? This actually means that it's happening now, right? I know some people are saying, it means that you fear that they will be, like this. No, it's saying والتي تخافون. You are now, you have become afraid of their nushuz, right? It's causing fear, right? Nushuzuhun is something which is happening now, right? It's not something. It's nushuzuhun means it's right now, right? You are fearful of their nushuz, right? Like you're saying, I'm fearful of somebody's bad temper. Well, he has bad temper now, right? I'm fearful of somebody's, I don't know, addiction. He has that addiction now. It's not that I fear that he will be addicted. Right? So it's not that, right?
So the translation is wrong.
The translation I haven't seen though. Let me see what is in this translation. It's for those who you fear rebellion. It says you fear rebellion.
Yeah, you see?
This one says, yeah.
It's
which translation are you looking at?
It's all of them. If you open just Google it up, Surah Al-Nisa, ayah 34.
Yeah, can you see it? Sorry, I thought I was sharing the screen.
No, I can't see it. It's still the old one.
Oh, you can't see it. Oh,
it's still the old one.
Hold on. Is it still the old one? I changed the wrong. Sorry, my bad.
No problem. No problem.
Oh,
it's always nice to get a different perspective, a new input, so it's for me also something different.
Let me just see. This is this verse. Okay, so that's why I was like, I was changing the wrong verse in the screen. Hold on. Here we go. So 4:24. Is it there now?
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So.
Yeah. It says there, you see in the middle, it says, as for those from whom you fear rebellion. So it's not even something that has happened, but you fear it, that it's going to happen. And it says again, and now keep in mind, I don't acknowledge the brackets because it's not there in Arabic, but it's so again for Sahih International again.
Let's see. Let's bring out some of these other, because I don't really look at the translations much, to be honest with you.
But it's interesting.
But I can tell you.
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you that certainly in Arabic, it's not talking about sort of like future fear. Like for example, if it's going to be future fear, you would say وَلَاتِ تَخَافُونَ أَنْ يَنْشُزْنَ, right? Those who you would fear that they will become in nushuz, right? That they will. It isn't that. I mean, one of the things about Arabic is that, the tenses in it are different from the English, etc. So it says here, and those who you fear may be rebellious. So this one is, like you said, right? This one is arbitrary. And this one, and those who you fear their ill conduct. So this one is more like, it seems like now, right? This one, those who you fear rebellion. Yeah, I suppose that's future as well. See this one, by those who. Where is it?
It's like something that
from those who you fear arrogance. I mean, look, let me show you a simple way how to see it. Like it says here, so you see it in the shoes of hun. You know the hun in Arabic, yes? It means there, right? Right.
No, I just know va. Va means and. I don't know Arabic that much.
It's fine. It's fine.
I can just read Arabic, but that's about it.
Yeah. So no, but I mean, I just have to tell you what I definitely know about the Arabic here. Is it says وَلَاتِ تَخَافُونَ نُشُوزُهُنَّ. Now, of course, when you say somebody you fear something, you can fear something, the future of it, or something which is happening now, right? So yeah, it could be something which is in the future as well, right? But it also definitely can include nushuz which is happening now, right? But I mean, I don't want to get sidetracked on that specific point, because okay, yes, you can have it, you can sort of beat it both ways. Definitely, though, the main thing is talking about their nushuz now, right? It's not exclusively about.
Because in Surah Nisa, this guy just showed Aslam Beg. He just showed it a verse from Surah Nisa, ayah 1 1-2-8. If this is what was only existing, I could have accepted it. Like if a woman fears indifference, now it could have gone for both parties. I'm just having a discussion that if a woman fears indifference or neglect from her husband, there is no blame on either of them. They seek settlement, which is best. Humans are ever inclined to selfishness, but if you are gracious and mindful, surely Allah is all aware of what you do. Quran, Surah Nisa, ayah 1-8, which is acceptable, I think. But it should go both ways. That is just my humble opinion.
I understand. Yeah. Look, I perfectly, I understand it. I know, and there's there's a lot which I'm sort of not saying, because I don't want it to get. It has to be said right, because, like I said, it's not easy to get your thing right. Now, here again, the shoes here, it's the same idea. It's the same idea. Now, irad here is the neglect part, but the shoes is the same. It's somebody who is. It's the same idea over there, right? It's somebody which is overstepping their limits. They're going beyond where they're allowed to be. Something which is nashiza is something which is not in its place, right? Something which is not in its place, right? It shouldn't be there. It's gone out of its limits. It's gone beyond its limits, right? But this is also, when you talk about something which has limits, okay, and it's not in its place, where is it supposed to be? Where is its proper place? When it comes to, like I said, the relationship that's being talked about here, which is the relationship of women and men, pretty much in all cultures all around the world, the traditional gender roles, which is the place of the man is at the head of the household, right? He's sort of like in the end in charge, right? The leader of the family, and she is subordinate to him, right? That's how it's always been, right? Rijal qawwamun al nisa. It's talking about this dynamic, right? In this dynamic. So in this dynamic, when it comes to somebody is, it's you're not going to have the same sort of like checks for both, right? You're not going to have the same sort of like disciplinary measures for both, right? So it's not going to be the same, right? The Rijal Qawamun al Nisa, in the end, he is the person who's going to be in charge, right? So her nushuz is different from his nushuz towards her, right? Him being out of place, right, is different. His place is he's supposed to be, protecting, caring, right, providing, all of these things. That's his place, right? And so she's supposed to be in a supportive role. Him being put back in his place, okay, is not going to be in the same way that her being put back in her place. That's one thing. The other thing is just it comes down to, a lot of it comes down to the nature of men and women, right? The different natures. Like, for example, coming back to this idea of وَهَجُرُهُنَّ فِي الْمَضَاجِعِ, right? Leave them in their beds, right? I mean, this as a disciplinary measure towards a woman, no man would have ever thought of that, right? No man would have thought, okay, let me discipline this woman by staying, not going to her sexually, staying away from her. And no man would ever think of that as being something for women. And that is something which would never work on a man, right? No man would ever, if his wife is angry with him and decide, I'm going, they're having an argument or something, and she gets up and leaves the bed and goes somewhere else, most men would be like, okay, finally I can relax. Okay, the argument is over. It's not hurtful at all or anything like that towards a man, right? But it's very different for a woman. Okay, it's very different for a woman that her husband, who is there with her, shares the bed with her, and who she wants him to desire her and stuff like that, and he gets up and leaves because he's displeased with her, right? All right, that can be very difficult for a woman, especially, like I said, if the cause of the nushuz, which is, like I said, this is each of these things is geared towards an actual issue, right? So, like I said, I mean, it would take a long time to explain, and I don't know if we can here, but like I said, there are some women whose nushuz, their nushuz is rooted. The cause of it is rooted in their sexuality, right? In either the man being too lenient towards her because of her sexuality, right? Or her herself having a grandiose opinion of herself, right? And thinking she can get away with murder just because of her sexuality, and because she's very attractive, very beautiful, or something like that, and so she thinks she can walk all over the man. So what is being told here is that you men, right, leave them, take that away. Okay, show that it's serious, and that the power of that sexuality it doesn't have this hold. Okay, that this nushuz is not going to be acceptable, right? Do you understand what I'm saying? That by taking that, by the man removing himself from her sexually, okay, getting away, she sees that it's not enough. I can't just. It's not just about sex, and I can do whatever I want. All right. It's not going to be tolerated. And for him himself, maybe he himself is actually has this problem. Okay, so he's shown to be a stronger man by moving away from that. Do you understand that? So there's a lot more. There's things here which are very deep, right, in the verse. Even in the وَضْرِبُوهُنَّ, even in that, right? If you like, can you PM, DM me, give me a private message, and we can go over that part as well, because it's just easier to put it all in sort of like thoughts and structure it all out properly. Right?
I just hope you don't get irritated by me, because many of them, people just get so irritated and then they just shut down, So yes, definitely, I would love to. I was myself thinking to ask you the same question. How can I, come in?
Yeah. Look, so, I've like I said, I've explained this to a number of women privately. They DM me quite regularly, women, of course, because this is the biggest thing. I mean, this for me was always the biggest verse, right? This verse for most of my life, I looked at it and thought, I don't get it, right? It seems wrong. I don't understand it. But I've been lucky in that I'm not somebody who would. I've never been somebody who's in a rush with these sort of things. So I think, look, I don't understand it. Maybe I never will, and I just put it on the shelf, right? I would hear explanations of once why it means, leave them, right? Adribuhunna means leave them, right? Or go and strike them. And I try to entertain these a little bit. I look at them, but of course, it just comes out as nonsense. It's not true, right? So, it actually does say hit. It does say hit, right? And it's not. And again, believe me when I tell you this, that it's not. It's not as bad as it seems to seem, right? Like I said, for a long time before this, I thought, this is just. I don't understand that, which is something which I recommend to people as well. If they have any problems with something in the Quran, it doesn't mean you have to understand everything. There are some things which you can say, okay, look, I don't understand this, okay, but from the Quran as a whole, it gives me faith that there is something here which I don't get, and I will leave it for now, and maybe in the future I will get it, right? Yes. You don't have to understand everything in one go. Okay, this is sort of like a push from shaitan. You should understand everything, or I will akfur. I will leave. No, you don't need. You can get enough faith from the things that you have. They will give you the required faith to have patience with something. Right? You don't have to know. Like Hassan Farah Malik says. For example, I don't need to know. The diameter of the sun, how far away it is, the temperature of the sun. No, I can see enough of the sun to know that it exists, to know that it's real. Okay, even if I don't know all of the details or how it works or how I have all these questions about it, I have enough to give me confidence that it's there, and that's good enough. And there are things in the Quran which I still don't understand, of course, right? And if you had asked me this about this verse, like I don't know, around 5 years ago, I would have said, look, I don't know. I don't know why it says hit. It seems wrong. And by the way, if something doesn't seem right, you shelf it. You don't act on it, right? If you don't, only a fool does something they don't understand, right? You don't have to go, practice something if you don't really understand it, right? And that's fine. You can. God isn't a machine, right? You can just say, look, Allah, I don't understand this, so I don't know how to go about you doing this, right? I don't understand why this is there. I don't understand the reasons behind it, and so I can't. If I try to do this, I'll make a blunder. I can do something wrong, right? Because I don't get it, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The whole you have to have honesty. You have to have honesty, okay, in what you understand, what you don't understand. And for me, like I said, this has become one of the verses which I see as a real sign of the Quran. I mean, people think, okay, this is strange to think of it that way, but it's true. So now I see this verse as one of the greatest signs in the Quran. I don't see it as something misogynistic. I see it that it's something which actually really does help. It really does help. There are women, which this really, really helps with. And inshallah, when we discuss privately, I can hopefully show that to you more. I mean, I've been wanting to put this into proper videos, to make it just as clear in a way where I will not be misunderstood, right? But I don't have as much time as I would like to be able to
No
do
problem.
that.
No problem.
Yeah.
Last question I would ask. I mean, I can have so many questions, but I
Yeah,
know
no, you
that.
can stay for as long as you like. I mean, there's a few other people waiting, but it's fine.
Yeah,
I'm
I
happy
think,
to
yeah.
stay.
Quick one. Just a
Mm.
question, like if a Muslim say that I don't believe in any hadith, I reject all hadiths, are they then kafir? Are they
No,
non-Muslim then? Are they
of course,
disbelievers then?
of course not. Of course not. No. I mean, it's ridiculous. The people that say that, they're just being absolutely ridiculous. And in the end, they want you to accept their hadiths. They want you to accept the hadiths of their sect. Tell them, okay, fine, I'll accept hadith, but I'm going to accept the Shia hadith. Then see what they will say. It's not. It's just ridiculous. Okay,
But why do they want?
it's a lack of faith in the Quran. Okay, because from a very young age they've been told that the Quran is not enough. They've been told that the Quran by itself will misguide you. They've been told all this kind of stuff. Okay, and so they will say that, and because again the scholars have made these proclamations that the Hadith rejects or kuffar. They will call you kuffar because of that, not because they've thought of it themselves, right? Because that's what they've been told,
You
right?
know, I Quranic. I mean, you're a lovely person.
Khalid, by the way, you can call me Khalid.
Khalid, thank you. I
Yeah,
didn't know if I was permitted to ask you. I was being
it's fine.
respectful,
It's fine.
But
Yeah.
lovely, Khalid. First of all, I really appreciate, the way you have spoken, the way your ikhlaq is. I wish other Muslims could learn something from you. I don't need to agree with you, but you sure have my respect. That is for sure. And I would also say that there is a Muslim out there. He says he's in family with Muhammad, which I don't comprehend how you can be in family with Messenger Muhammad. But when that is said, he actually came to my channel and he said that because I just openly said that I have never, been taught about Hadith when I was young. I understood it first later. I didn't even know Sunni Shia existed until the age of 18, 19. I only knew, that I'm a Muslim, Allah is my, everything. I just loved him. I didn't know about Muhammad that much, to be frank with you. I just
Yeah.
knew about Isa, Musa. I didn't know much about Muhammad. So I was more connected to these other prophets and Allah, of course, mostly. But the thing that really amazed me and still amazes me because it happens constantly, those videos are shut at the moment. I have closed them. But the thing is, he said to me, well, because you don't believe in Muhammad, you didn't know anything about Muhammad. Your parents didn't brought you properly up. You have never been a real Muslim to begin with. How can somebody be so? I mean, it's not my reputation they are destroying from where I'm watching and listening. It's their own idea because Allah never says to the Muslims to judge other people. Because as far as I understand, the Quran very clearly says, don't be judgmental, don't be arrogant, Allah says in the Quran.
Yeah. لا
So,
يسخر قوم من قوم عسى أن يكونوا خيرا منهم. Don't let not one people belittle or scorn or look down upon another because the former might be better than them, right? It might be
yes,
better than them. Yeah.
yes, and Allah even says in the Quran, like if somebody is talking in a manner that is being kind of, you can say, disrespectful, you get up from that conversation, and then you come back when they can so-called behave again in the conversation. So I don't
Exactly. Yeah.
understand. You know that surah, right? It is in the Quran that
Yeah.
So I just from aside, when I just give, like, I came to your channel, I asked you a question. You didn't go ballistic on me. Ballistic meaning you didn't go negative on me. You didn't say, well, why are you saying this and that? Why is it I always, I mean, I know the answer in a way, but it just amazes me, Khalid, that Muslims don't discuss, they call me hateful. And I swear I have never said anything. Yes, I have very, in the beginning, very aggressively spoken about Islam. And I also apologized about that. And now I just speak in a different way that I would rather want like the people to speak to me. So, you always so-called criticize, but do it in a good manner. You can question things. But the thing is, they always call me or other people hateful, and I'm not being hateful, I'm questioning Islam. Why is it that they do that? And one more thing, and then I will disappear, is the Hadith says, and the Quran doesn't speak, let me be also very honest about this. Quran doesn't say if anyone leaves Islam, kill them. On apostasy, Allah never says, and I have read the Quran many times, Allah never says kill the apostates. Yes, Allah does say crucify their hands and legs, and do cut their hands and legs, or whatever it is, if they talk ill about Islam. But it doesn't say kill those who leave Islam. So my question is, why is it that the Sharia law, because it says, by the way, in the Hadith, the Sahih Hadith, that kill those who leave their religion, and every single scholar speaks about it. Why is it? I mean, maybe not the one that we know about, but any other, he says.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, to go back to what you were asking before, why do people just come up and speak hateful and things like this? I mean, in the end, you just have to sort of like also try to understand where the person is coming from. Sometimes people are agitated like this just because they are not secure in themselves, right? I mean, you find this. Somebody that maybe gets angry at you or ballistic of you, etc. These kind of things. It's because you're touching a nerve which in themselves they haven't resolved. Sometimes that's what it comes down to, right? Sometimes, I mean, again, people are just very complicated. I mean, it's difficult to say why anybody would. I mean, you're talking about a lot of people who would come on and engage in that kind of way, and each person might be a different reason why they're acting that way. Right? People are just messy and complicated when it comes to these sort of things. Why people are behaving a certain way, and shaitan is there as well. People just get pushed into a certain way. Some people are just more hot-headed. There's a lot of factors around that. The other thing you mentioned was what about the killing apostates? Of course, that's completely against the Quran. But why did it become part of Islam? Just because the history. Right, it became part of Islam because of the history. Look, there's this, after the Prophet passed away, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was a lot of changes, a lot of movement, a lot of things happened between then and when finally the religion was sort of started to be, some of the imams tried to codify things, right? So Imam Malik, Abu Hanifa, they came later and they tried to sort things out. But in between that time, so much happened. It means so much happened, right? And a lot of it comes down to how the authorities are. People in the end follow the religion of their leaders, right? That's how it is. People sometimes talk about how the reason why that Islam was spread to Indonesia and these places by Sufi traders or people who are traded by just people just promoting Islam peacefully, right? No, people became Muslim there because the leaders converted. Right? When the leaders converted, everybody converted, right? That's how it mostly goes, right? People just follow the way their leaders, like what's happened now in Saudi Arabia, right? So Hassan Malik and others have been speaking against these fanatics for years, arguing with verses from the Quran, arguing with Hadith, arguing with all of these things, right? And all they do is argue back, and they say no, and they call them deviants, etc. And then on one day, Muhammad bin Salman says that all of this was extremism. The next day, the same sheikhs are on television talking about how they've made tawbah, that it's right, all of that was wrong that we did, and now we are. And one of them even said this, poor guy. He was like, "I am on the religion of Muhammad bin Salman." That's why he literally said that. He's scared for his life, right? Okay, people followed the rulers like that. So one of the things that happened after the Prophet died is what happened. You had the Ridda wars, right? The so-called apostasy wars, right? Led by Abu Bakr, which were a travesty, right? Well, Abu Bakr completely mismanaged that, right? Completely mismanaged that. He lumped all of these people together as apostates and then went out and fought them, and so that became evidence for killing apostates. Okay, that's one thing that happened there. Then later on, we had also the first king, right? The first tyrant king of Islam, right? After Muawiyah, right? He did one of the things which reverberated around the whole Muslim world was how he executed Hujr, right? A man called Hujr bin Adi. He was one of the Sahaba, but he was sort of like he was, because of course there was a civil war between Muawiyah and Ali, right? And then Ali got assassinated, and then Hassan gave up the power to Muawiyah just to because he didn't have the support, really. He didn't have the support, and he wanted to avoid the bloodshed. And so Muawiyah became the ruler, right? But he had a governor in Kufa who would put pressure on the followers of Ali, etc. One of the things they would do is in the prayer, when the salah was happening, they would spend the whole, for Jum'ah or these khutbahs, they would spend the whole time just propaganda. Okay, propaganda against the righteous people, propaganda for the Khalifas, about obedience to the ruler, about all of these things, and they would delay the salah. And so Hujr and people would sometimes stand up, say, "Oh, Amir, the salah, time for salah." They would do that. They would sometimes do a khutbah from Dhuhr time all the way to just before Maghrib, and then pray both Asr and Maghrib, right? And they would make people swear that they did not pray at home and swear not to pray when they left home, etc. One person who didn't have any backing, because if you're a poor person, Hujr at least he was a leader among his people, right? Other people, there's one person who, just because he said to the imam, as-salah yarhamukullah, time for prayer, he was put in prison for like 20 years and forgotten about, right? But anyway, the point is he was eventually, this man Hujr, the governor got a bunch of people to write their shahada, their witness in that this person had become a kafir, right, and that he should be killed, right? And so that's what happened, right? He was sent to Muawiyah and him and a bunch of other people, and he said to them, "I will let you go if you curse Ali. I will let you go." He refused, and so he was executed as an apostate, right? And so these things started to become precedent for that. And then, of course, him doing that meant that the hadith needed to be there to justify it. So rulers would do certain things, and then the hadith would come later, be invented by the scholars for dollars, the scholars who are around them, invented in order to justify what the ruler did, right? In order to say, oh, he did the right thing, right?
But
it was allowed.
It's so, again, I'm so glad. I mean, I could listen to you for hours, seriously. The thing is, if that is the case, I mean, I get you, but this is a kind of a corruption then. It is corruption within the Islam that they have created after Muhammad's death. So they actually corruption. They corrupted the religion. They corrupted the, you can say, the religion, the Quran, in the sense that so there is no hadith, then I'm right when I say that there is no Allah saying in the Quran, follow any hadith. So they created these hadiths to mess the religion up completely for their own advantage.
This was happening even while the Prophet was alive. While the Prophet is alive, why are there these hadiths of the Prophet saying, "Whoever invents a lie against me, then let him take a seat in hell," right? Because it was happening in his time, right? And why does the Quran say, "Leave them and that which they invent"? It was happening while he was alive. People were inventing things while they were alive. Even if you read the last surah that was revealed, Surah Al-Ma'idah, right? It talks about those who were, doing tahrif of the words. Okay, يحرفون الكلمة من بعد مواضعه, right? Let me actually bring that verse because it tells you something about the history. Very, very important. This is one of the last surahs that are revealed. It's in let me bring it out. Ma'idah, verse 41.
Oh my God! May I use some of your clips for my channel? May I show this to
Yes, of course. So 5:41. Look at this. I mean, I'll just go straight to the translation just so you see it. I mean, look, this is something which is this is Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 41. So look at this. This is giving you a picture of what's happening at the time. So it says, "O Messenger, let it not grieve you, okay? Let it not grieve you, those who race each other in kufr." Now, this is after the whole of the Arabian Peninsula had become Muslim. Everybody should be a Muslim by now. So who are these people who are racing each other to kufr? Who are they? This is the last surah revealed. This is after after the conquest of Mecca, after Tabuk, after all of this. Okay, this is like just before the Prophet passed away. Okay, and the Quran is saying, "Oh, you O Messenger, let it not grieve you." Why is it saying that? Because he was grieved. He saw his religion being sort of like games being played. Okay, it made him sad. So the Quran here is comforting him. "O Messenger, don't be sad. Don't let these people who you see racing each other to kufr make you sad." Okay, and then it says, what about them? مِنَ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا, from those who say we have iman with by their mouths, but their hearts don't have iman. Okay, those such men who say with their mouths we believe, but their hearts believe not. And مِنَ الَّذِينَ هَادُوا, and among the Jews. And again, this is another thing to understand. The traditional Islam tells us that all of the Jews in Medina were killed. Well, were either killed or expelled. Yes, that you had the free Jewish tribes. They were killed or no. This surah talks a lot about the Jews in Medina. There were still Jews in Medina, and it's telling here what they were. They were also among those who were racing in kufr, and that's why we have so many narrations are actually being brought in from the Jews, like the stoning to death. The stoning to death is a Jewish practice. Okay, it wasn't from, and there's a lot of influences. Ka'b al-Ahbar became almost the de facto mufti of the ummah, right, in Muawiyah's time. Okay, min alladhina hadu, and then it says what? It says samma'una lil kadhib. They listen to lies, right? They are listening to lies. Who are making these lies? What is being made up? Okay, samma'una liqawmin akharin. They are listening to another people. There are some other people. Who are these other people? They are listening to other people. Lam ya'tuk, who have not yet even come to you. And then it says yuharrifuna al-kalima min ba'di mawadhihi. They do tahrif. They change. They pervert the words from their intended place. I'm sorry, after they've been put in their place even. There's another verse which talks about diverting words before they even get to their place. Okay, and then when it says yaquluna, they say if you are giving this, then take it, but if you don't, then watch out. Okay, and this is basically about the authority after the Prophet. Okay, and then it continues. But look, this gives you a snapshot that there was a lot going on. There was a lot going on. The Prophet spent his.
So if the stoning is from the Jews and it has nothing to do with Islam, then what about the circumcision, which is also from the Jews and it has nothing to do with Islam? Why?
Yeah, it's basically a cultural practice, right? I mean, even to be fair to traditional Islam, it's not something you have to do. Okay, they consider it to be just like a sunnah. It's a cultural practice of the Arabs, of the descendants of Ibrahim, right? Something which Ibrahim did as a covenant to God, as a mark of dedication or something, right? And then his descendants did it. The Jews did it, and the Arabs did it. The Arabs also did it. Okay, but it's part of the Arabs did used to circumcise, right, before Islam as well, right? And it's just continued, right? It's continued. It's not some.
So
you don't have to do it. No, it's nothing. There's no indication for it in the Quran at all. Certainly, you don't have to do it, right? And there's nothing about it. But what I'm just trying to impress on you is this idea, right? That basically the Prophet spent his last few months pretty much almost ignored, right? He was being heavily ignored. If you watch what was happening, he was being heavily circumvented. Right? They saw that he was dying, and there was a scramble for sort of like, what will happen after him, who will be in charge, these sort of things. Okay, this was happening. This is why, for example, he spent 14 days trying to get the army of Usama to go. He'd made an army to go up north, right? And he spent days trying to tell them go, and they wouldn't go. He died with them still there, right? He died with them still. They ignored him. So there was a lot happening, right? And look at one of the surah before the last reveal, which is Surah 9. If you read that, see how heavily it criticizes everybody. Okay, and if you read the Quran sort of chronologically, you'll see an increase in the number of hypocrites. Also, there's still praise for the righteous, but you see that they are smaller and smaller compared to what's happening all around. The Prophet spent 13 years in Mecca, right? Most of it oppressed, Okay, then he immigrated to Medina with maybe what, 70 families, right? That's it. And those are the people who had believed, right? Around 70 families, some of just a couple of individuals. They are the Muhajirin, right? And then most of the Medina period, okay, he doesn't have power beyond Medina, right? And in Medina, of course, there's divisions in there. You had the Jews and the hypocrites and the mushrikeen who were still there, right? The Prophet only gained amount of power, sort of amount of authority over most of Arabia in the last year or so of his life, last 2 years. Okay, Arabia is like the size of Europe, right? Just those years are not enough to completely change the people, right? To completely change the mentality, the cultural understanding, the religious, the spirituality of a whole people. Even if it was a whole of the 20 years, it's not a lot. It's not a lot, right? And he didn't have those 20 years of all of them. Okay. So when the Prophet died, most of the people were still just really yes, they were some had become Muslim, had accepted, but you saw how quickly it wasn't very deep, because how many of the Arab tribes renegated on Islam, right? How many declared their own prophets, right? As soon as the Prophet died, there were like 4 other new prophets that had come up, right? So it's the history. I mean, understanding the history really does tell you a lot. It really explains a lot, right? And it's difficult for me to try to put it all, explain it all in like just sitting here in one session sort of thing. But there's a lot that you can unravel by really understanding the history, right? Really understanding how things went wrong, what happened, the different factors that changed things. A very good book I recommend is The Succession to Muhammad. I mean, I think generally the Seerah, right? The biography of the Prophet. You probably have a overview of that, right? That's a book which will tell you some of the things which happened afterwards. Okay, I mean, you can read the normal, of course, biographies and the information about the caliphate after the Prophet, but a lot of that is edited, okay, because it's written by Sunni Muslims usually to make everything seem nice. Everything was okay, right? Everything was hunky dory, right? And then when things went wrong, they blame it all on some fictitious character. Abdullah bin Saba, they say, right? Who they say he's one who did all the fitna over Uthman and stuff, even though it was really the nepotism of Uthman. It's putting the Umayyads in charge and their oppression and their zulm, and they're killing people and refusing to have a lot happened, right? By the time the last Sahabi, the last companion of the Prophet had died, the Ummah had been ruled by about 8 or 7 tyrants, depending on who you include. The Kaaba had been destroyed twice. The Medina, the Prophet's city, had been invaded and sacked twice. And in one time, about 1,000 girls were raped. Okay, the Prophet, almost his entire family were massacred at Karbala, right? Like Hussein, that happened. The remaining Sahaba were literally branded like animals on their necks, right? By Hajjaj and others. So much happened. I mean, things went bad very, very quickly, right? Very, very quickly. Things went really, really bad. And in the end, you had people like Anas bin Malik, right? Crying and weeping, saying, "I don't recognize anything from the time of the Messenger of Allah." They said to him, "What about the Salah?" He said, "Even the Salah, haven't you done to it what you've done to it?" Right? Even that was going. So things unraveled very, very quickly. Okay, these were not people of intense intellectualism. We have this loft in Sunni Islam. We have this lofty idea about that generation, because that's what they're told. They're the best generation, and no people afterwards could ever be better, the Salaf, etc. And so all of that plays into it. So when you take these people as some of what they did as guides, right, then that becomes part of your religion. It becomes part of the religion. Okay, a lot of there are things which are in our religion, which are only things which came up later by were put in by authorities. I mean, in Saudi Arabia, used to have the what's it called? The religious police would go around with whips to beat people, right? Well, where did that come from? That came from Umar ibn al-Khattab, who used to do that. He used to be able. He was a caliph, and he used to go around with a whip and hit people. Right? The Prophet never used to do that. He never had that. The Prophet never went around with a whip.
So Khalid, how do you trust then? How can we trust then that if, let's say, because many Muslims, you know, that there is a group called Hizbul Tahrir. They say very openly they're a political party, Islamic political party. I have questioned them, and they also exist in my country. And they very openly speak about Khilafat. And I'm like, how can any Muslim trust their agenda then? That when after even Muhammad, or I mean, when he was alive, that is one thing, but especially after Messenger Muhammad's death, that they committed these things, this kind of corruption. How can anyone trust that a Muslim will bring a true Khilafat? That's my question. How can you trust something like that when in the past, as soon as Muhammad died, Messenger Muhammad, bam, they betrayed everything in regards to Islam? Because when you bring corruption in you know, when it comes to Islam, then you are betraying the religion as a Muslim. So how can anyone trust them?
Well, I mean, they have a very whitewashed view of the caliphate. A lot of them, I used to see them as well. Hizb ut-Tahrir, these people, they had just this. They think that Khilafah will come and solve everything. All right. When we had Khilafah, it didn't solve everything. Right. It went bad to worse. And which Khilafah are you talking about anyway? You're talking about the Ottomans, the Abbasids, the Umayyads. They were all different, and each caliph was different. Right. And even the four, they called the four righteous caliphs. Each one of them was different. Right. Each one of them had very different policies. Some of them were more just. Some of them were less just. Right, so you can't really trust it, because in the end they haven't even had an honest look at the past. Okay, instead they idolize the past, and they're fed on the stories of the past Muslim greatness. Right, so you just have to basically you can't really speak with them because the basis is wrong. Right, you'd have to go back and start speaking of the basics. Or if you speak to them on the general idea, then you have to just talk about what is about establishing justice. In the end, that's all it's supposed to be. The only purpose of a caliph or a caliphate or anything is even the whole purpose of why God sent the religion, the books, and the messengers was to establish justice. Right, that's what the Quran explicitly says, so that mankind can establish justice. So in the end, when it comes to caliphate and these sort of things, what matters is the most just. That's what you seek, right? The best caliphate is the one which is the most just, no matter who's in charge, even if it's not a non-Muslim in charge, right? If you've got a non-Muslim and they've established a place, a country which is just, that's a caliphate. That's a better caliphate than a Muslim one, okay, which hasn't done that. But they don't understand that, because the whole thing is warped, right? The whole idea is warped, right? That we just have to establish caliphate for what? They have no idea, right? They don't see justice as something which everybody can understand. They don't see that the Quran really is and the messengers are supposed to be guiding towards justice. They don't see that. They think that we just have to reestablish bring back a long dead caliphate the way it was. When it had its problems, but they won't see their problems. So it's messy. But what I do recommend that learning more about history, if you want to understand how one of the ways to come to a clearer picture of Islam is by seeing what history has done to what we have now as Islam. Okay, that's one way. Another way is you can ignore everything and just look at the Quran, right? And look at it, without these ideas that people have about it, right? That it's even the Quran is now, like I said, they talk about it's fully detailed, right? These are not accurate things. These are not accurate things about it. That it's the perfect word of God. It doesn't say that. Okay, that it's at the height of eloquence. Nothing can be more eloquent. No, it doesn't say that. Right? Look at just what it says, right? Look at what it says. Even the whole thing about the preservation of the Quran, right? So that's become an issue a little bit now, because people now understand the whole background of the qira'at the manuscripts and these sort of things, right? I mean, even that can be a way to understand history, because we don't have a single manuscript from the Sahaba, right? Like the people know that that Abu Bakr made a collection of the Quran, by Zayd. Then what did he do with it? Nothing. He didn't make any copies. Okay, it was just hidden away, and then Umar took possession of it for 10 years. Nothing was done with it, right? And then until a problem emerged in the Ummah, where people started differing about things, then they bring out the copy, and then they make imperfect copies. They send that out to different parts of the Muslim world, and we don't even have those. We don't have those. Where are the copies? Where are the copies of Uthman? They should be in our museums right now.
Yeah,
but people didn't care.
No, and the original was destroyed and burned. The Hadith even.
Well, I mean, and this, for example, I don't see that, because Umar, I mean, the narrations say that Uthman ordered that everything else be burnt, but we don't see that. Where are the narrations of people burning the mushafs? They don't exist, right? Where are the narrations of people copying from those mushafs which he sent? They don't exist. In fact, when people revolted against Uthman, one of the things they accused Uthman of was burning the Quran, which means that those people themselves didn't burn their copies, okay? Because they wouldn't accuse him of burning the copies, and they themselves would have done it. Of course not. Also, you had Ibn Mas'ud in Kufa, who was telling people, don't hide your copies of the Quran, hide your copies, right? Don't let don't let Uthman come and get them. But Uthman never did anything. He said to people, burn them, but he never enforced anything. He never went, he didn't send a posse out. I mean, the Ummah was huge at that time. The empire was big. He didn't send people out to go and collect them and do mass burnings. There's no evidence of that, right? So, I mean, it's a complicated thing. But what I'm trying to say is that even when it comes to the understanding the preservation of the Quran, you can see the faults which are in history. But we have people now who say that the Sahaba did the best job possible. They couldn't have done anything better. I mean, come on, get off it. There was no better way to go about it, really, than to have the sort of lowest ranking scribe of the Prophet, Zayd bin Thabit, right? Because he was just a little boy, all right? He was young. He wasn't one of the great early Sahaba. It wasn't Ali ibn Abi Talib, for example. Nobody wrote more of the Quran for the Prophet than Ali. He was his primary scribe. But Abu Bakr and Umar didn't choose Ali to compile the Quran. Why not? Because of the political dispute that happened. Okay, Ali had not given them bay'ah, right? So they chose who? They chose Zayd, because he is from Aus, and Aus were the traditional allies of Quraysh, right? And so they chose him, and he was young and safe, and they could control him. Right, they basically, he would toe the line, right? And so they had him collect the Quran. And what happened? People gave him bones. What is this? You think people didn't have a copy? The Prophet had a full copy, by the way. He had his own full copy, and he left it with Ali. And then when Abu Bakr became the Caliph, Ali actually brought the copy to them, and then they said, no, we don't want it, because they didn't want to be indebted to him, basically. And then later on they decided to make a copy, and like I said, this copy was just basically hidden away. Nobody, it wasn't shown to people. It wasn't shown to the rest of the Sahaba. Check it, please. Make sure there's nothing we've missed. Sign it. No, nothing like that was done. It was hidden away for about 15 years, right, until the dispute happened. That dispute should never have happened. What happened in Uthman's time should never have happened. But they were too busy conquering, right? They were too busy going out and invading people who had never done anything, right? They invaded most of North Africa without any provocation, right? So it's thing, and that's why the sort of the righteous caliphs, they stopped all of the expansions. Ali, when he became caliph, they didn't go and invade anywhere, right? Al-Ma'mun, he stopped invasions, right? He stopped all of these expansions and things like this. So you can understand a lot from the history, okay? And you can understand, for example, like, of course, people look at this and say, but the Quran says God said He will preserve the Quran, but He doesn't say that. Does the verse say that? It doesn't say that. It says a dhikr, right? Inna nahnu nazalna dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidhun. Right? But people will say, no, dhikr just means Quran, and then just go along. Don't think about it. No, think about it, okay? If God had wanted to say Quran, He would have said Quran. He said that dhikr. Okay, and there's a reason why it said in dhikr. Dhikr is not the same as the Quran. Okay, they're not the same. Just interchangeable. Anyway, I hope I'm not giving you a headache, huh?
Quranic Islam, most likely there are others. And I appreciate the fact that you gave me time to ask you questions, and I
No
appreciate
problem.
answers. I'm really glad that there is a Muslim out there who is the way you are. So yeah, you have my respect definitely, and thank you, Khalid, so much for letting me use your video as a clip or just share it. But I will also be talking about, because I want to make small videos. So, but I'm going to talk about this sheikh's name. So, if possible, you can in the description box send, write your email or where I can reach you, so I can communicate with you at least.
Yeah, I'll put that now. I mean, it's a very it's a weird email address, but it's in search of the Quranic Islam, or one thing, in search of the Quranic Islam. That's my Gmail. You can get in touch with me there. I'm also on Reddit, which is where, like I said, a lot of people contact me there. You can DM me there. So there's there. I'm also on Twitter. So you can find me there, just Quranic Islam.
What are you on Twitter? Quranic what?
Just Quranic Islam, Quranic_Islam. Like, let me put it now.
Yes, I'll find you. Perfect. Lovely. Because it's necessary. For me, it's not about necessarily that. How should I say? My job is not. Neither am I after. People should say that Islam shouldn't exist in this world. For me, it's very crucial that we all should be able to live together happily and keep the religion private. I don't say to us that who leave Islam, oh, you're gonna die. Because once on my channel, couple of months ago, years ago, 2 years ago, there was a Muslim. He came and he said, well, if I know where you are and I see you, I will give you 3 chances and then you have to die. I was like, I was just listening to him. I was like in utter shock. And like, just listen.
These are like little children, man. To be honest, I mean, I've had that as well. By the way, I've had people say that. Oh, if I knew where you were and this and that, it's like, just get out of here, man. Go do something useful.
Don't understand that, that you can say something and then believe that somebody's going to love your religion. And in my country, and I was a Muslim, by the way. I'm just sharing a story with you that when I was a Muslim, because I was very strong within myself, like a person could come to me and say, your messenger Muhammad is piece of blah blah blah, your Allah is this, and Khalid, I was cool as a cucumber, because for me it was not about that Allah is bad or Muhammad is nasty. For me, it is their opinion, and I respected their opinion very calmly. And there was a drawing of Messenger Muhammad in my country. I reside in Denmark. I'm from Scandinavia. And Khalid, they went ballistic. People, Muslims, they started burning cars in the city. You know this. And I was in shock. I saw these things. I was so ashamed as a Muslim. I said, where is your self-control? Where is your love for Allah? Where is your belief in your religion? Where is your strength in your religion? Because at that point, I was very much in like, okay, Allah is not like, I didn't even believe that there's a Jahannam up there, by the way. I never believed that, that there was a Jahannam. I had my idea of Islam. But when people were acting like that, I was like, do you really think Allah's gonna be happy what you're doing? I was literally ashamed. And second point, it was the first time also that when I came to Facebook, because I was not on social media that much, so I came on Facebook, and that was the first time for me where I also saw and read that Messenger Muhammad, pardon me, I'm going to say it, but it said that Messenger Muhammad is a pedophile. He married a small girl, at the age of 6, and this and that. You know the story, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And I was baffled by it, and that is the reason I started talking about Islam is not like that. Don't talk like that. Hadith is wrong. It is blasphemic. Basically, I considered Hadith to be blasphemic because it's very dirty. If you look at it, how they speak about Messenger Muhammad, how he did something and somebody drank something that was of Messenger Muhammad's, you know what. And I was like, if that is not blasphemic, Khalid, then I don't know what is.
Yeah.
You know, so that's why I left the hadiths and then other stuff. But I don't get it, that why Muslims get so fast agitated. Why is their belief not strong enough within themselves? Why don't they keep their religion private? Allah says even in the Quran, Khalid, in Surah 7, I think it's ayah 55, where he says, be private when you call upon me, when you think about me, like when you pray and stuff. So the azan is not even mentioned in the Quran. The praying on the streets, dirty streets, praying, show offing. And I'm like, why are you doing it? Khalid, people are not going to love the Muslims because of that. You can be loved and will be loved and respected because of your actions. Actions in the sense when you respect another being. I respect you, Khalid. Why? Because you have shown me the same thing.
Yeah.
You see? So
well, it's not that difficult.
yeah. Yes.
Yeah, but
So
like you said, I mean, some people find it. I don't know why. Like I said, people who go ballistic and things like this. I don't know. I mean, I guess some people are just, they're very, I don't know, hot-headed, hot-tempered, and they get agitated. And also, there is also this problem of Muslims feeling attacked by the world. Recent events. I'm talking, historical events from colonialism to the whole war on terrorism. It's like people can start to get angry because of that. So they feel like they're always being attacked, and so they lash out. So why people behave that kind of way is a myriad of reasons, but it's just a simple fact that they shouldn't, right? Simple fact that they should be patient, right? I mean, like you said, there are many verses in the Quran about this. It said, that you will certainly hear from those who were given the book before you and from mushrikeen a lot of harm. But if you hold to taqwa and have patience, that is truly the azm al-umur, that's really taking care of business, basically. Having patience and restraint. But unfortunately, these are not what's given, and I don't know. Maybe I don't know, to be honest, how things became like that, and things are changing even now, right? So things are becoming more, in a way, becoming strange, right? So you've got Muslims now who are proud of like they're promoting Islam, the misogynistic things which they think are in Islam. They take that as now a reason to become Muslim, and a reason. It's very strange. Like I mentioned before, like now it's become one of the reasons to become Muslim that people are given is they say that Muslims, Islam solves all of the problems. Promiscuity, just stone into death. Their problem solved, right? And it is not given. People like actually put that forward as a good thing.
Is Khilafat the solution?
No. How can which Khilafah, first of all? Which Khilafah? Who's Khilafah? The person who's like saying Khilafah is the solution. Most of the time, I would not want their Khilafah at all, right?
What do we need?
What's the solution?
Because Muslims say we want to, many of them, they speak about we want Khilafat, we want Islamic State, we want the whole world to be Islamic. Do you think it can happen justly, honestly?
No, I mean like I said, the goal is justice. It isn't Khilafah. The goal is to establish justice. It isn't to establish Khilafah. Khilafah is supposed to be to itself supposed to be to establish justice, right? So it's not, it's not the reason for it. We're not going after Khilafah for its own sake. And if you bring these different models of Khilafah, some of them were not just, right? A lot of them were not just.
Does Islam give just to non-Muslims?
Yeah, it should. Yeah, without doubt. I mean, like I said, first of all, Quran doesn't give these things like make a khilafah or it doesn't give like a model for like state affairs. It doesn't say you should establish this or make this or put policies like that. Just like it doesn't give laws, right? The Quran doesn't. There are no laws being given in the Quran, apart from a few things, right? So like the inheritance laws and things like. But these are called, again, these are called hudud, right? Limits, right?
But what about
Or the
jizya?
Quran,
I mean, I'm continuing. Horrific.
yeah,
But because
that's fine.
giving a good response. But
Mm.
jizya, like if you don't convert to the religion in a battlefield, or there is some story there, why give jizya to be able to remain in your religion?
Yeah, no, you can. The jizya has got nothing to do with. So what happened is that, again, this goes back to understanding why history is problematic, right? So there were some places, sometimes in some areas, Muslims did go around to places and say, okay, we'll give you three choices: either convert or pay the jizya or come and fight, right? So we're going to. You had these things, right? Now the jizya has got nothing. There's nothing to. Jizya is basically war reparations, right? Something which everybody has done. That's why it's not defined in the Quran, right? It's just mentioned once in the Quran because it's something which was known. War reparations. That verse, the verse of Jizya, is actually about ending conflict. It's about ending conflict, how to end it, right?
Doesn't seem like that. It is in Surah Tawbah, I think it is.
Yeah. I mean, I can bring it up if you want.
Yes, please.
Which one is it? It's number 9. So 31, right? Was it 30? That's before it, so it's 29. Yeah, here is. So it says here, look, قاتلوا, so fight. قاتلوا الذين. Now here it's talking about who are these الذين لا يؤمنون ب, etc. Right? So it says قاتلوا, fight. All right. It doesn't say, it's not about continuing the fight, and you'll see, and it's not about starting the fight, and you'll see why, because it says here hatta, until, right? So if you were to ask the question, okay,
I'll read it in
until.
English. I just read it in
Yeah, I'll read. Sorry, yes, I'll read it. Sorry about
I'm
that.
not good at it. The Arabic, yeah.
I'll read it in English in a minute. But if you were to ask this question, until when should you fight? Until when should you fight? Okay, so let's say a conflict has started, and what's the conditions for a conflict to start in the Quran itself, right? All right, because this was the earliest surahs. This is one of the last surahs, right? So the earliest surahs have already, for the Muslims already by this time, for about 8 years, have already had the verses which say, do not fight except against those who fight you. That's already been established, right? How to start, the beginning of conflicts, right? قاتلوا في سبيل الله الذين يقاتلونكم, fight in the way of Allah, against those who fight you, but do not be the aggressors. God does not love the aggressors, right? And get them out from where they got you out and fight them where they fight you, etc. Right? So it's all about this thing. So you're never supposed to start a conflict, but how do you end it? Okay, this is basically telling you a verse which is basically telling you how to end it. So it says qatilu, so it says fight those who believe not in God and the last day and do not forbid what God and His Messenger have forbidden. Such men as practice not the religion of truth, being of those. I mean, it's very clumsy translations because it doesn't. It's just clumsy translations, to be honest, because it's a very difficult verse to translate easily into English. Has practiced not the religion of truth, being of those who have been given until they give the jizya, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it means,
right?
it says until they're humbled. When you read it further, out of hand, and have been humbled. So why are they asking for jizya? Because it's an act. I consider it to be disgracing somebody.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So again, so let me just talk about a little bit more about this. So this is talking about who are these people? I mean, do you know any? So it's talking about people talking about the people of the book. Yes, Jews and Christians. Do Jews and Christians not believe in Allah? They do. Do they not believe in the last day? Well, they do. Okay. So who are these people who are being mentioned here? وَلَا يُحَرِّمُونَ مَا حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ, and they don't consider haram what God and His Messenger have considered haram. Who? What is this talking about? And they do not يُدِينُونَ دِينَ الْحَقِّ, right? They don't. Now here it says deen, but again, it comes down to really understanding the Quran and its use. Deen, like in Surah Yusuf, when the king says that it was not for him to take his brother in the deen of the king. Deen, it means like allegiance. Okay, it means allegiance and obedience as well. It doesn't mean religion, right? Here, وَلَا يَدِينُونَ دِينَ الْحَقِّ مِنَ الَّذِي from الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابِ, from them until they. So the background about this, basically, these people who are of the exact description. This description is the northern tribes in Arabia who were allied. Their allegiance was to the Romans, and through them they were like vassal states. You've heard of vassal states? A vassal state is when you have like two empires, like you had the Roman and the Persians at the time, right? And they have vassal states. So they had some Arab tribes who were like vassal states, and they would use them in their conflicts. So they use them to fight each other and to raid, right? And so these people here were the vassal states of the Romans, right? And they were the ones who attacked the Muslims, right? So they attacked the Muslims, and so what this verse is saying, and so the war, they had started the conflict, right? That had been. So this verse saying, fight them until these vassal states, give the war reparations. Jizya is war reparations. It's something which since ancient times has been done. So like when Persia and fought the Greeks, they had to pay war reparations. When Germany lost in World War I, they had to pay war reparations. Whenever in a war, the losing party would pay a war reparations to the winner, right? Now, if it's unjust if the one which is lost were the ones which they're sort of oppressed. So let's say two countries, country A starts a war with country B, and country A wins, and then on top of winning and starting the war, it forces country B to pay the war reparations. That's even an increase in injustice, okay? But when one country has started a war, right? They've started a war, a conflict, and you defeat them, then you impose upon them war reparations, all right? And it's supposed to, like you said, keep them humble, like to keep them from attacking again, right? حتى يعطوا الجزية عن يد, so they still have some power, وهم صاغرون, and they have been put down. Okay, so these are the people who started the conflict. You have to put them down, right? Put them down by getting them to pay the jizya. Also, by them paying the jizya to the Muslims, these northern Christian Arab tribes, right? They weren't really Christian. That's the thing. That's why this is being mentioned. If they were sort of Christian by allegiance, they called themselves Christians because their allegiance was to Rome, and so that's it. But they really knew nothing about Christianity. They had no faith in God or on the last day. They didn't consider what Christians consider haram. Okay, and their allegiance was on batil. Okay, it wasn't an allegiance for truth, right? So by getting them to give the jizya now to the Muslims, it makes them break their ties with their overlords, the Roman overlords, right? So if they give the jizya and war reparations to the Muslims, okay, Rome will no longer see them as vassal states, right? So they're now sort of like severs ties with those who are using them to fight. And so the Prophet, it was only when he did this, because of course this verse was revealed, right? And it was only to those northern Arabs, Christian Arabs. It wasn't, for example, to the Christians who came from Yemen. There were Christians who came from Najran, from Yemen, and they didn't have to pay jizya, right? And when southern Yemen when it gave its allegiance to the Prophet, the Christians there didn't have to pay jizya, right? The jizya was only for these specific Arabs who had started the conflict, and that's why the whole of the verse, Surah Tawbah, from the beginning, it's a very there's a lot of history in it. If you go back, we're only 29 verses in. If you go back, right, it's talking from the beginning about what happened at that time. Okay, what happened at the time, and the alliance between some of the Meccans and hypocrites with some of the Christian tribes in order to have to attack Medina, right? So the breaking of the treaty, there's a lot in here, and that's why this is the last verse. The last verse is the verse which is telling you how to end the conflict. The next, all the verses before it are all talking about the fighting, right? About don't let them the mushrikeen come to the to the Masjid al-Haram, etc. Right? So it's all about the conflict that was there. And this verse here is the last one. After that, now it's just talking about this, it's going on to theology. It's going on to theology because now this is done. It's talked about how to end the conflict, and that's it. So the beginning passage of the surah up to here, it's about that conflict, the breaking of the treaty, right? If you go all the way back to the beginning of the surah, it talks about how God is bara'a, is free from those who had made the covenant, okay, of the mushrikeen. Okay, those who made a covenant, they broke their treaty, and this is what the next verses say. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of the tafsirs, they make it out to seem as if God is here breaking the contract. Okay, he isn't breaking the contract. They are the ones who broke it, right? They broke the treaty, and that's why verses here are talking about these people now they have 4 months to go about their business, and then it's going to be resumption of war. Okay, you broke the treaty. 4 months respite to repent of it or whatever, okay, or to go to your place. After that, we're going back to war because you broke the treaty, right? You broke the treaty by of the alliance with the northern Christian tribes, and again, there's history behind this, and that's why it talks about those who did not break their treaty. There's nothing upon them. So there were some of the mushrikeen who did not break their treaty with the Muslims. So here it says, except in those idolaters whom you made a covenant, then they failed you not, neither lent support to any man against you, because that's what the others did, right? They broke their contract, the covenant, the peace treaty, and they gave support to the northern Christian tribes against them. So they broke the contract, but these other ones didn't, and so these ones who didn't, there's nothing against them. Okay, fulfill for them the covenant until its term, right? Truly, God loves them, muttaqeen, etc. So there are strings behind it, but generally, just in terms of jizya, it's war reparations, right? It's what has always been done in conflicts, right? That when a defeated party pays the war reparations to the victors. It's a known thing, and it served a purpose here, and it was against those who are specifically mentioned in the verse, right? Those who fulfilled these. It's not any Ahlul Kitab. He was talking about those. قاتلوا الذين, these people here, those who fulfill this actual quality, this description. Who are the people who fulfilled this description? There were the northern Christian tribes, the ones who the Meccans supported against the Muslims when they broke their treaty. All right. It's a long explanation. I don't know if you got it, but
no, it's very lovely. Thank you so much. I appreciate everything. I have noted down your email. So thank you so much. Hopefully,
okay.
there are some other people as well who wants to talk. I've been almost for 2 hours, but
no, it's fine. It's fine.
Thank you so much, and
No problem.
I'll see you another time. And
Okay.
take care. Thank you.
Okay,
Peace.
brilliant. Thank you so much. What's your name, by the way? I didn't even ask. Sorry.
Well, my name which is showing on the screen, it's India.
India.
I changed it, not because of somebody else. I had another name, and
That's
the
fine.
interesting part is, Khalid, that when I had that name, Muslims were saying to change it, actually. But I didn't change it for them. Let me make it clear. But I had another name, but I changed it. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so it was wonderful speaking to you, India, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you. I just saw the notification, so I joined. Thank you.
Okay, take care. Now. All right. So let's see who we have. We had a few people who were backstage. We still have Aslam. I'll bring you on in a minute. Anybody else who was here and they left, I apologize. Maybe we can do another one maybe tomorrow or sometime this week. I have a bit more time in my hand now. There were some new sort of accounts which I'd never seen before, so if you're listening later, I apologize, but we can do this another time. It's fine. Anyway, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. Is my voice audible?
Yes. How are you
Oh,
doing?
thank you so much. I'm doing good. Hope you're doing well.
Yeah, I'm doing fine.
Yeah, so good interaction, a lot of learning. Actually, yes, this fulfills the purpose of the Quran, as that other lady who joined, and there was an interaction going, because the main purpose of the Quran is, at the end of the day, is tadabbur. So we were able to do the tadabbur of the verses. I mean, if we can hear 1 hour in Arabic, somebody is doing tilawat in tajweed. Okay, after the time it becomes like will not feel will feel disconnected, because it's in
Mm.
Arabic and this thing. But the main purpose is the tadabbur. So it was a good interaction.
Mm.
So
Yeah, yeah. She was lovely.
yeah. So a couple of points I noted. One of the thing, as you mentioned, that many of these people who are, who are like the Quran, who are alone or related. I mean, so it's, as you stated, that it's like a reactionary thing, correct? As you stated
Yeah,
that.
I mean, for some, that's what I feel that for some it's a bit reactionary.
Yeah.
You find a lot who are very clearly they were very Salafi, they were very thing, and
Correct.
so when they come into Quranism, they become a bit reactionary. One in terms of rejecting all the hadiths, and so then they try to force the idea that the Quran is fully detailed, that it basically
Correct.
takes the place of hadiths. The
Correct.
issue is, of course, that the hadith should never have been like that in the first place,
Mhm.
right? And so when
Correct.
when when, when they then look at the Quran, they try to make the Quran fill the void that's left by removing hadiths, rather
Correct.
than just taking the Quran
Correct. Correct.
as it
Because
is. Yeah.
if you see the history also,
Mm.
when the Malcolm X was there, the Nation of Islam, when it was there,
Mm.
it was also like a reactionary thing. Then
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
later,
he was saying, yeah, they were at the beginning, right? They were saying things like, the black man was the first, the one that
yes,
was
correct,
created by God, and the white man is the devil, and these kind of things. Yeah, so again, it was a sort of more of a reactionary
correct.
sort of thing.
So
So you just have that. Yeah.
correct. So the thing is that for them, it's important that let us not make it reactionary. Instead, have a discussion more of like in practical aspect. Like, for example, in the Quran, it mentions many a time that if they consider that the Quran mentions that when the Almighty, God Almighty will manifest, each human being, 7 billion, will go alone to the God. This is in
Mm.
the Quran as well. So if they accept that, the Quran is, so they will accept in the Quran. Surah Maida mentions that to God you will all return. Then He will inform you regarding your differences.
Yeah.
Similarly, in Quran 16:19, had God willed, He could have made you one nation,
Yeah.
and your Lord would those on earth would have believed. So a lot of things where in the Quran it mentions that I will resolve your differences. God will.
Exactly. Yeah.
So in the
That's
practical
a,
aspect,
that's
yeah,
that's a very important point because people want to resolve all the differences here in this world,
yes,
and the Quran, certainly the Quranic approach for some things is that no, there's leave them for God to resolve them
correct.
in the next world.
And
For those who try to, yeah,
correct.
go ahead. Hmm.
Yeah, and let us coordinate with each other, because Quran it mentions that you are all part of one community. You believe in God, you believe in angels, and you believe in good deeds. So when the Quran around people, if they do practical things like God mentions adal, justice, like you are just in your life. So the person will see your deeds, because God mentions that what you used to do, this is called it not what you had particular knowledge, it is what you used to do. We created life and death so to observe, and then
Hmm.
we made you successors so that we may observe you. So that
Hmm.
what you used to did, that amal, what you used to did, so that aspect, like the Quran people, if they start being more honest in their daily life, if they are forgiving people, if they are controlling their anger, if they are fulfilling the promises, these differences will not this dispute will not arise, because the traditional people will see, oh, practically this person is fulfilling the spirit of what the Quran is saying practically
Hmm.
day to day life, instead of having a dispute. So we can have more what unity in these guidance aspect, instead of having a difference in the certain interpretation aspect.
Yeah, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, yeah, I mean, look, one of the issues which brings more differences is the people wanting to impose later So, there are people who want to impose, for example, some of the usul or some of the ideas from the second century, third century, the principles of this madhab or that madhab or this imam. So you have different things from different places, everybody drawing on different things. So it's going to create even more differences, right? When people try to take from then and then apply it here in our time now. So you have people now here in our time using different things from the past to apply them now, and so that's going to create even more differences. Whereas if they all just took primarily from the Quran, right, there'd be much more of a chance of unity in that. All right, much more chance.
Correct. And actually, as the panelist, the lady, so the traditional one, why they go for the hadith? This is my assessment when I interact. So I feel that the term radiyallah anhu in the Quran it mentions. So the traditional people feel that it belongs to the Ansar community of that time. So because of that, they
Say
feel
that
that.
again. Sorry, I didn't get that. Say that again.
I was saying in the Quran the term mentions radiyallah anhu, that
Yeah.
radiyallah anhu. Yeah, that
Radiyallahu, may
term,
God be
yeah,
pleased
yeah,
with them. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that is related to that ancient community of Ansar, and they were whatever lifestyle they had. So which is mentioned in the Hadith. So they
Well,
that is the reason. Yeah,
it's also mentioned
traditional people.
generally,
Why? Yeah,
but it's also mentioned generally. It's not just mentioned about them,
yeah.
right?
But how
So,
generally the traditional people interpret it? I'm just saying. Like,
no, I mean the actual verse, the verse radiyallahu anhum. There's one which is saying that about the the Ansar and the Muhajirin, and not all of them, only regarding some of them, right? Um, there's a verse for that, but it's a verse which is general, okay, which is general as
yeah.
well. Like in Surah Al-Bayyinah, at the end of it has جزاؤهم عند ربهم جنات عدن تجري من
Correct.
تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه. Okay, well that is talking about not just like the Ansar or the Muhajirun. Okay, it's just talking about الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات, right? Those who have faith and do good deeds. God says about them رضي الله عنهم. Right? So it's a general, including everybody. It's not
Correct.
thing.
Yeah. So
And
today's
even the verse about the Ansar and Muhajirun, it's them and those who follow them in ihsan. Those who follow them in ihsan. So even now, people who follow them in ihsan now, also radiyallahu anhum. Okay, those who came
correct.
afterwards.
Correct. As your session today is about Q&A, I have some one or two questions. But before that, I just wanted to share certain things. As like a lot of times the people use the term Islam.
You cut
I
off a little bit, by the way. You
Yeah.
sort of your voice goes
Are,
low and then high again. I
are
think
you
it
able
might
to
be
hear
your
now?
voice. Yeah, I can hear you better.
Okay. So now what I was saying, many a time people use the term Islam, Islam. So Islam is this, Islam. So they're making like something Islam like a deity or something. Instead, my understanding is that Islam is what Hazrat Ibrahim, when he saw the universe and then he decided Aslam to Rabbil Alameen. So it's when you decide to submit, when you decide to become truthful in your life, when you decide to control anger, when you decide to be patient with human beings. So this is
Mm.
actually the submission, and this is actually
Mm.
the Islam instead of the religion. So I think the translation should be more submission. What I
Yeah,
believe submission.
yeah. I mean, it's fine making it translating it that, but of course, it's a wide. I mean, it's a wide thing. There's a wide range of your Islam. There's the Islam, like we said, of the Arab, the Bedouins who had no faith, right? When they said, قالت الأعراب آمنا قل لم تؤمنوا لكن قولوا أسلمنا. The Prophet is told to say them, no, you don't have faith. Not say we have submitted, we have Islam. And then you have the Islam of Ibrahim, which, like you said, there's the Islam of Ibrahim, which is a high Islam. إذ قال رب أسلم قال أسلمت لله رب العالمين. I have submitted to Allah, the Lord of the worlds. These two Islams are on opposite ends, right? On the opposite ends, but lower end and higher end. And in between, there's going to be a big spectrum of people's Islam. Okay,
Yeah,
there's the higher Islam of Ibrahim, and then there's low Islam of the Arab, which is just basically like physical, with no actual faith or iman.
correct, correct, correct. Now coming back to my question. So my question is, when I was studying Quran yesterday, the translation mentions the people were
Yeah,
asking
sorry,
how
you're cutting off. You're cutting off a lot.
one.
Try something else. Yeah.
Yeah. How is it now? How is it now?
Yeah, better, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, all right. So yesterday, when I was just reading the English translation, so it mentions that the Arab society people were asking, like, give us a different Quran. So does the vocabulary, the term Quran, was the term familiar with the ancient society of that time? The term, basically.
The term Quran.
Yeah, the term, because in the Quran it mentions,
No,
they were
no.
telling, bring us a different Quran, like that something.
Yeah. No, I mean, they got the term from the Quran itself, from earlier surahs, right? From earlier surahs. So they recognize that what the Prophet was reciting, okay, it's calling itself the Al-Quran, a Quran, right? So when they later said this thing, said him bring a Quran other than this or change it, okay, they were just using a word which the Quran had brought about. Just like when they asked, "Wa Rahman," right? They were asking, "What is a Rahman?" Right? Not because they had this term before, okay, that they were actually confused about what a Rahman means, right? But where did they get it from? They got it from when the Prophet, from earlier surahs, right? So they say, they said, Wamar Rahman, and what is a Rahman, right? So, and it's
But
been shown,
does
by the way, that Rahman is it comes from um, uh, earlier South Arabian inscriptions, which were used basically by Christians to mean the Almighty. Rahman, by the way, doesn't actually mean the merciful. It means, a better translation would be the Almighty.
yeah,
Doesn't actually come from Rahma directly.
yeah. So the term Quran, does it have its own meaning somewhere? The
Yeah,
Quran term.
yeah. So the word Quran itself, like the etymology of that, of course, it has a meaning which is about reading, right? Like recitation and reading. Yes.
Yeah.
So qara'a, Quran. So a lot of people make it. It comes from that, but it also, in fact, means to join and to
Oh,
gather.
okay.
Yeah, it has that meaning as well. That's how the Arabs use the word, the root word for that, right? They would talk about how, for example, they would say, for example, a she camel, that her womb has never Quran a fetus. It hasn't put together a fetus. This womb has never put together a fetus. Okay, which is why, in fact, in Surah Al-Qiyamah, it's sort of like a pun. There's a kind of a pun in the verse. Let me actually pull it up. Where
Yeah.
it says, "Inna alayna jam'ahu wa Qur'ana," right? "Inna alayna jam'ahu wa Qur'ana," which is Surah Al-Qiyamah. Which verse number is it again? 17. Right. So there's a sort of pun in this verse, which people miss if they don't understand the etymology here. So it says here, لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به. Don't move your tongue to sort of like to be in haste with it, to make it memorizing quickly. So the Prophet used to, when he got a verse or a surah from the Quran, he would try to move his lips with it, right? Recite it in order to capture it and not forget it, right? So Allah said, you don't need to do that. Right? لا تحرك بلسانك إن علينا جمعه وقرآنه. It is we who will gather it and put it together. Okay, Qur'anahu here means sort of put it together. We will gather it in your heart and put it together. Okay, now some of the reciters, of course, they put it as recited. I'm not sure if there's any which actually put this double meaning which is here, which Qur'anahu here also means to put something together. So Quran means to like put it together in how it should be, right? So jam' is to gather things. Let's say, for example, like you've got like Lego pieces scattered around, right? And you want to build something. So first you have to gather all the Lego pieces, you put them together, right? You gather them together in one place, and then you arrange them. You put them together how they should be. Clip this with this and that with that until you've built what you need, That's sort of what it's saying. You, the Prophet, it's upon us that we will gather it together, gather it in your heart and put it together as well and join it in the right way. And then it says, فَإِذَا قَرَأْنَاهُ. So once we've put it together, then you follow its putting together or follow its recitation. So then you recite it in that kind of way. So it's double meaning. So Quran also has this idea of actual reading, right? Now another place where you can understand what Quran means is in Surah Al-Waqi'ah, where it says, إِنَّهُ لَقُرْآنٌ كَرِيمٌ فِي كِتَابٍ مَكْنُونٍ لَا يَمَسُّهُ إِلَّا الْمُطَهَّرُونَ. That the Quran is Kareem, and it's fi kitab, it's in kitab, and it's maknoon, it's sort of like hidden or concealed. The idea is just like having a pearl inside a clam. It's maknoon, right? And a clam, how do you have to open it up, right, to get to the pearl inside? Okay, so the Quran is like something which is inside, hidden inside the book. Okay, the Quran is like a hidden pearl within the kitab. Okay, إنه القرآن الكريم في كتاب مكنون. And how do you get to it? لا يمسه إلا المطهرون. No, you can't. Nobody will be able to touch it except with purity, except those who are pure, right? So what is that about? That's basically what I think the Quran also means. It's sort of like the deeper, a real reading. It's like literally what I say, Al-Quran, the reading, like a real reading of the Quran, a deep reading of it, and a reading where you've put it all together. If you talk about Quran as being, joining, putting things together in the right way. So when you read the Quran, right, you are reading it and you are putting it all together and you're reading it in a deeper way. It's not a surface level reading. Do you understand? Because you're putting it all together in sort of like one go. So that's another meaning. That's the meaning of Quran. So it has to do with both the recitation and it's being put together. Okay, and not recitation, reading, actual reading, not just the recitation, but the actual reading.
Correct.
So that's what I would say about that.
Yeah. Similarly, I just want to understand your personal understanding for this verse, which mentions Tilka Ayyamu. If you are aware about this verse, Tilka Ayyam.
نداولها بين الناس. Yes.
Yeah.
تلك الأيام نداولها.
Yeah. How do you interpret that verse?
Yeah, تلك الأيام basically means how sort of almost like what goes around comes around, right? What goes around comes. These are the days change between different people. Sometimes some people are at the top, right, in power, in charge. Like the Muslim world was for a long time the pinnacle of civilization, right? But now it's not so much. Now it's the Western world, right? So تلك الأيام نداولها بين الناس, right? And it's part of the testing of peoples, right? So the Arabs were for a time at the top, right? And how will they behave there? And now they're near the bottom. How are they going to behave now, right? And the same with anything else. Right?
So actually, I put across the same understanding to this political people.
I can't hear you very well.
Yeah, are you able to hear now?
A little bit better, yes.
Yeah, so I was saying I put the same understanding to people who are of political understanding of faith. That this is what it means basically, that God will test with different. Sometimes the British Empire was there, before that Persian Empire, then the Arabs were there, then Turks were there. So it's going to be changed. So it was because of that.
Yeah. I mean, that's when you look at it in sort of generally. Of course, the verse itself is literally just talking about battles, right? So sometimes you win a battle, sometimes you lose, right? So it's saying that إن يمسسكم قرح فقد مس القوم قرح مثله. If you sort of suffer difficulty, right, during this conflict, then they have also suffered difficulty before you, right? So you lost at Uhud, while they lost at Badr, right? Basically, yeah. You lost at Uhud, they lost at Badr, and this is basically because this is Surah Al Imran, which is all about Uhud, and of course the Muslims basically lost in Uhud. So it's just saying, okay, yes, you've lost, you've suffered a blow, you've suffered a loss. Well, they've also suffered a loss. وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. And these are the times, the days we cause to sort of swing, alternate between people. Why? لِيَعْلَمَ اللَّهُ, so that God will know, for God to find out who truly has faith, and so that He can choose, so that He can take among you witnesses, real witnesses, shuhada, not just martyrs. And then what's the rest of the verse? Down with nas. وليعلم الله الذين آمنوا يتخذ منكم الشهداء والله لا يحب الظالمين. Right? And God does not love the unjust, the tyrants. So when you are in the position of winning, don't be a tyrant. Right? Don't be a zalim. Yeah, so it's just that. It's just talking about the different situations that people can go through in terms of in life. Sometimes winning, sometimes losing, sometimes on top, sometimes below, right? And it's sort of
because because why I was linking this thing because with my third question, that is the only question I wanted to ask. Because this thing happens, and I don't know what this Izzat Ali Beg. Do you know Izzat Ali Begovic? He was the Prime Minister of Bosnia. That war and all happened.
No, I don't know about it. No.
So there was a war in Bosnia that in 95, 96 it happened, and many children became orphans during that time.
Yeah.
And because of that, because he was given what you call us, he was given a post of a minister, but then they decided to separate it and make a different country. So Bosnia was part of a country, but then they made it, we are Muslims, and they made it a different country altogether. And then the war happened, a lot of children become orphans and all. So I wanted to ask in reference to this adoption, because that time many people adopted those because they wanted white kids. This is a rumor. They wanted white kids. So many Muslim families adopted those Bosnian white kids. So I just wanted to know on this aspect of adoption. Is it really forbidden to adopt children for believers?
I don't think I caught that exactly. You asked me, is it okay for Britain to adopt? Is that what you're saying?
Is it forbidden to Muslims for adopt children?
No. Why would it be forbidden to adopt
because
children?
This is how traditionally has been put across, as you are aware. Like,
well, they say you can't basically change the name of the child, right? That's really what it comes down to. They say, when you adopt, you can adopt, but because adoption in the West is sort of like the child is given your name and your surname, right? But it doesn't have to be. It's not a requirement in adoption that the child takes. It just means you have to name them according to their actual parents, right? That's all. But other than that, yes, you can adopt.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah. That's the only thing I just wanted to get. Sure. Thanks.
Okay. All right. No problem. So I can take care. All right. Let me try to get to some of these comments. Somebody has a comment which I didn't. I know there was a lot of questions. I'm sorry. Not very good at multitasking the comments and guests. But okay. So we have this question here. Okay. If I hear this, how did we still manage to receive the Quran uncorrupted from the time till now? Is it so that could simply not tamper with that because of the people had it in their hearts? I see it basically. I mean, it's an amazing thing that the Quran actually survived all of that. When you actually see what happened and how it happened, it's an amazing thing that the Quran actually did survive. Right? Some say that there was no better way for the Sahaba to preserve the Quran than what they did, which is of course just absolutely ridiculous. The best way would have been if they had actually accepted the original copy of the Prophet and made copies of it. Let's say you don't believe that the Prophet had a copy, then the best way would have been straight away. Abu Bakr got all of the senior Sahaba together, especially his main scribes, the Prophet's main scribe who wrote for him more of the Quran than anybody else. From the Muhajirun was Ali, right? And from the Ansar was Ubay. And these were recognized. Ubay was seen as the Qari of the Sahaba, right? Sayyid al-Quran, the master of the reciters, right? And then you had Ibn Mas'ud, who was again a great scribe for the Prophet, who wrote so much of the Prophet, the Quran for him, and who learned from the Prophet directly over 70. One of the earliest Sahaba. You had the Prophet's cousin by his mother, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. You had so many people, right? Instead, you give it to just one person, the youngest of the scribes, right? Just as this young boy. Why? It's obvious again because of a political issue, right? He was safe. There had just been sort of like a a dispute about the power, right? And he was safe. He was young, right? He was from the Aus, who were from the two tribes of Medina. You had the Aus and the Khazraj. The Khazraj were all because they were related to the Prophet. They were and to Banu Hashim. They were very close to Banu Hashim, right? The Prophet's great grandmother was from them, right? And Hashim he married a woman from Bani Najjar, from the Khazraj. So the Khazraj were more allied with Banu Hashim, right? The Prophet's sub-clan, whereas Aus were more allied with the rest of Quraysh, especially Banu Umayyah and etc. So that's why he was chosen. A better way would have been to have literally the great Sahaba all come together and write and put down straight away the Quran, write it out in perfect copies, double check it, triple check it, everybody read it, sign off on it, right? And actually create a system of the dotting and these things so that anybody can recite it and vocalize it properly. That would have been the best thing to do. Not give it to the youngest person who goes around trying to track down different sheets and from people's memories and whatever, and then put it together. We don't even know how, if it was put together properly. We don't know much about what happened there. And then what was put together was hidden away for the rest of the caliphate of Abu Bakr. It wasn't shown to anybody. It was hidden away for the rest of the caliphate of Umar. It wasn't shown to anybody. And until the dispute happened in Uthman. Let's say it didn't happen in Uthman's time. Imagine if nothing had happened in Uthman's time, right? And he didn't even know about it. Uthman wasn't the one who found this problem out. Somebody came and told him, right? Somebody came and told him, there's this dispute happening between the Quran, regarding the Quran, so do something about it. And then when he gets his committee, who does he choose? Again, he doesn't bring Ali, he doesn't bring Ubay, he doesn't bring any of the great older Sahaba who were there from the beginning of the Prophet writing it down for him. He brings the Tulaqa, he brings the people who became Muslim on the 11th hour, right? He brings the Marwan, Anyway, so they make their copies. We don't even know how many copies, right? Was it 4 copies, 5, 6, 7 different narrations? We don't really know how many. And then what happens to them? Nobody knows. They disappear. He sends them out, apparently. And we don't even have one now in the museum, not a single one. And they had differences between them. Okay, so the fact that the Quran even arrived to us as it has so consistent is an amazing thing. And like you said here, so what do we have? How do we know that the Quran has not been sort of corrupted or lost, or parts of it hasn't lost? Well, first of all, the Ummah spread out in such massive places, right? So it was spread out immensely, and then quickly they fell into factions. Quickly, you had different sects. You had different places of power. When Banu Umayyah fell apart, the Abbasids came up and took over, and you still had some Umayyads in Andalusia, and things broke up. If there were parts of the Quran which were missing, or people had said no, you've added or you've removed, you would have seen that. You would have had some sect, some people, some subgroup of Muslims somewhere with the Quran which is different. We don't have that. Complete uniformity with regards to the Quran that we have. What we don't have is complete uniformity with regard to the qira'at. But let's look at the qira'at. Qira'at are really, when you look at the differences, they are literally minuscule. They are really minuscule. That is very true about what traditional Islam says. It's minuscule. The qira'at, literally the differences are, most of them are totally meaningless. Most of them, not all, right? There are some which you have different words, okay? We have different words, or a particle added here, or the tense changed here, etc. But not a single verse changes. The actual verse. If you look at a verse where you have different qira'at which have different words or recitations for certain words, where the meaning of the word changes, the meaning of the verse doesn't change. Meaning what the verse is trying to say or teach stays the same. Okay, it stays the same. There is not a single verse which changes a meaning, which is significant. I have one sort of like amendment to the qira'ah. I'm gonna hopefully one day publish about it, not publish like as in scholarly article or something, but I'll put it on a thread in Twitter, I think, where I think the qira'ah of is affects the theology. Not affects the theology, but I think a mistake in the qira'ah has led to the whole idea of that the predestination of death, basically, that people are going to die, that no matter what you do, you will die on the day that is sort of written for you, that the day you're going to die is written, and that's it, and you can't change it, etc. All of that. So there's a verse which is used as evidence for that, and it doesn't have to be read in that way. Like I said, the qira'ah can still be written in the way which I think it should be, but I think the word should be recited differently in that verse. So it should be qatilu instead of qutilu. But anyway, I'll talk about it another time. I actually did talk about it in one of the streams previously. So what do we have? We have qira'at, which are very well documented, right? And we have pretty much all of the Qur'an in manuscripts. We do have that, and they all confirm each other, right? They all confirm each other. So we are very, very confident about the Qur'an in terms of what we have, the qira'at. What we don't have, unfortunately, is the original recitation of the Prophet, because of course the Prophet did not teach or recite the Qur'an in multiple ways. That is just a backtracked, invented thing, right? And the Prophet taught, recited, and taught to others in one way, one qira'ah only. Everything else is divergence. Okay, there's no 7 ahruf. When Abu Bakr told Zayd to collect the Quran, he didn't mention anything about ahruf. When Uthman made his committee, nobody talked about ahruf, 7 ahruf, and we have to nobody talked about anything like that, right? When there was a dispute between the two, the Syrians and the Iraqis about whose recitation is better, nobody talked about ahruf, right? It's completely missing in any of the history, apart from this one hadith, which makes it seem as if the Prophet waited for this whole mess to happen before telling people that, oh, by the way, the Quran is revealed in 7 ahruf. And when did he wait? Until basically the last year of his life, almost the last 2 years, because the hadith of Umar going to the mosque and hearing somebody recite the Quran in a way which is different to how he was taught it, that person was somebody who became Muslim after the conquest of Mecca. So Umar ibn Khattab apparently spent the whole of Mecca period, nearly the whole of Medina period, unaware that the Quran was revealed in 7 ahruf. And he only became aware because he saw somebody reciting something different for him. So what, the Prophet was just going to basically keep his mouth shut, secretly teaching different people different qira'at, right? And just wait for this dispute to come before okay, oh, by the way, the Quran is revealed in different ways, you're right and you're right. It's nonsense. It's nonsense, right? If the Quran had been revealed in 7 ahruf, the Prophet would have said that from the minbar, he would have taught that to numerous people. We would know what the 7 ahruf are and what they mean. Nobody knows what it means. Nobody knows what 7 ahruf means, hadith. It has puzzled the greatest scholars until they've said it's from the mutashabihat, and they say that I conclude that I don't know what it means. Because it's literally nonsense. Nobody could make any sense out of it. Right? The Prophet did not throw such a loop upon the ummah. Okay, near the end of his life, in the last 2 years. By the way, the Quran is revealed about 7 ahruf, and there's no indication in the Quran of anything about 7 ahruf at all. Right? So the Prophet recited in one specific way. He taught that one way, and it's the failing of the ummah that we don't have that. Just like it's the failing of the ummah, the early Sahaba, okay, that we don't have manuscripts of the Quran with their own handwriting signed by them. We don't have that. Okay, they failed in that, and despite all of that, we still have the Quran has come down to us completely without any sect disputing over a single verse, not even one. Well, that could be disputed about Al-Fatiha, to be honest. because there are some who say that Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim is not part of the Fatiha, and some who say that it is, right? And that has another reason. The reason behind that is complicated. It's again it's basically one of the crimes of Muawiyah again. And it has to do with this surah that we were talking about, Surah 9, right? Surah 9, which starts off without a Bismillah. Muawiyah is, everybody wonders, they ask, why does Surah Bara'ah, Surah 9, not have Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim? And you have all of these fanciful reasons, right? Muawiyah, I think he understood. It doesn't have Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim because this is the dissolvement, because they broke the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. And when they were writing, the Mushrikeen, when they were writing their Treaty of Hudaybiyah, they refused to have Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim put in it. They said no, right? When the Prophet started having Ali start to write down the treaty, when they decided on the treaty, he said, write to Ali Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and they said no, we don't know what ar-Rahman is, don't write Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, write Bismika Allahumma. So the Prophet told Ali, scratch out Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and write Bismika Allahumma. So they refused Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim when this treaty was being written. So here, which is about the treaty, it's not being put. The surah doesn't put Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And that tells you who this whole surah, this beginning, it's about. It's about Quraysh. It's about the same Meccans who made that treaty, and they broke it. Okay, they broke it. So Muawiyah, he clicked onto this. So later on, he saw this as a dig against Quraysh, against himself and Niyat. He was a hypocrite. And so he was the first one to stop reciting Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim in Salah, in the Fatiha. He would start the Fatiha with Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, without saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And all of the Sahaba, they said, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Have you forgotten Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim? He didn't forget, he did it deliberately. He did it deliberately because he was upset that Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim wasn't put into the surah, which is basically about him and his father and the Turuq. So because of that, we had this, and of course, when the leader does something, you have people who follow it, and so you had many other Sahaba and other people who are of the Salaf, etc., who would not recite Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim for Al-Fatiha until it became a point where the Malikis, the Hanbalis, do not consider Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim to be part of Al-Fatiha. And they number Fatiha differently, right? So the last verse, which is verse number 7, it's numbered differently in some Mus'haf. You can actually buy Qur'ans now like that, right? You can go to in Morocco and buy a Mus'haf because they're Maliki, where the first verse number 1 of Al-Fatiha is Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, and the last verse is split into 2, because everybody knows that Fatiha is 7 verses. So they force the last verse, they split it into 2 in order to make it into 7 verses, because they've removed the Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Anyway, so that's what happened with that. Sorry if there's any other questions. If there's anybody here still has a question or there was something, if you can put it down now again, copy it again so I can see it. I'll try to look through the stream, the chat, to see if there's anything, any question I can answer. Though, we still have 15 people here. Okay. I thought maybe I'd be alone. No, Iron Man, Salam. I didn't get to say my usual salams to the people here. Well, Fortnite here. Yes. And Prius, Assalamu alaikum, good to see you. Yes, exactly, it can be important. What is this? Thus, when you read it, you shall follow it. فَاتَّبِعْ Qur'an. Yeah, we talked a little bit about that. That is about the Prophet trying to memorize Qur'an. Here's a question. The Quranists think people of the book will enter heaven. Again, I can't answer for all of them, but I certainly entry into heaven is very simple. Deeds are weighed up. If your good deeds weigh more, you go into heaven. If your bad deeds weigh more, you go to hell. Simple as that, right? That's what the Quran shows. There's no group that you can join that will guarantee that for you, right? It all comes down to what you do, your actions, your beliefs. Actually, I believe this, I don't believe that. That's not relevant, to be honest. Assalamu alaikum, Adriana. Yes, exactly. All that you need to know about salvation is clear in the Quran. Okay, we have it over here. People go into the actions. I believe people who do good deeds and help people could. Yes, exactly. That includes atheists. That include polytheists as well, which is not the same as mushrikeen. Okay, polytheism and shirk is not the same thing. We have here a interesting username, right? 4:6 does not allow prophet to marry a 6-year-old. Okay. Exactly. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين. Guidance for the muttaqin. That's the purpose of the Quran. Yeah, I'll get to that. Hopefully, I'll get to that soon. Perfect da'wah. Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, he says, I absolutely don't believe it says beat your wife, but it says leave her. Yeah. And I'm firmly convinced it does say actually. And there's a reason for it. It's just like the leave them in their beds. I hope I explained at least that part well enough that you see that there's actually a deep reason behind it, right? It's actually to alleviate a cause for the nushuz, right? Nobody would actually, no man would ever think of, hey, let me, make my wife listen to me by abandoning in her bed. No, it has to do with the cause of her nushuz is this infatuation, her own self-infatuation with her with her sexuality, or his in her, right? And so that is allowing her to sort of like overstep the mark. You still have that nagging fear that perhaps God finds those sources to be true and will condemn them. So this is, this kind of that nagging fear is something just people have to get over with. There are some people who are like that, right? They will never be the first to speak up, right? They'll always be worried and they'll wait for everybody else to raise their hand before they will raise their hands, right? And unfortunately, some people, you just have to get over that. Some of it is due to a little bit like abuse, religious abuse, right? They make you afraid to think and to trust yourself. So, for example, when someone knows that Sahih Bukhari is full of nonsense, they still have the latent, deep-seated fear that they might go to hell if they reject it. And a direct experience of God is necessary for many souls on earth. Maybe if people experience divine illumination directly, they will finally have the confidence to ditch, abandon all falsehoods, and love the truth. Well, if that's what it takes, let's put it this way: if it takes a divine intervention to get you to ditch falsehood, then it's a big failure on your part, right? Because you're supposed to be able to ditch falsehood by the gifts that God has already given you. Just by your hearing, your seeing, your intellect, your heart, right? If that's what it takes, right? Like the people who say, I remember this one atheist person who would say, God should show me a miracle, so then I will believe, right? Oh, think of it this way: if that's what it takes a miracle to make you have faith and act in accordance to guidance, then what kind of a human being are you? I mean, how much worth are you in God's sight? If that's what it takes, then then what use are you? Almost, I'm talking about it in terms of the general reason why we're here. We're being tested for something, right? We're being tested for our love of being able to follow and recognize truth and do good, right? And to stay away from falsehood and stay away from evil. If it takes a miracle to make you do that, if you have to be forced to do that, then you've pretty much failed, right? You've pretty much failed. Highly, you are too nice to explain this ayah. The truth is, we live in a world where women are faultless and men are evil, but the truth is there are evil women. Okay, yeah, exactly. So that is one of the things about that verse. That verse, it's not really about evil women. It's not about. It really is about keeping the marriage together. It really is. It is giving things which do and can help. Yeah, this verse about the remembering of the covenant. So the way I see it is that it's sort of like it's like giving permission to be created, right? That by saying yes, you are our Lord, right? It's like I'm in this space which I'm, trying to give like a metaphor here, but like the space which God is creating, and He's going to bring you into it. In this space, He is the Lord, right? So before you can enter it, you have to accept that. Alastu bi rabbikum? Am I not your Lord? They said yes, right? And so it's sort of like giving permission to be created, right? Because another thing that people say is that why, I didn't ask to be created. Well, how do you know you didn't agree to be created, right? I think that there is this sort of like pre-creation chance, choice of being created or not. So that will be sort of like the gist of it. In terms of remembering it, right? Will we ever remember this covenant? There are some people who remember it. I mean, I actually met two people in my life who actually remember it. So there was this one girl I met, and she was from like this sort of like Sufi family, but she'd become very Salafi, right? And so we were talking, and she actually mentioned that this happening, she could always remember it since she was young. Like trying to ask her like what was it like gets you nowhere, because she's like, okay, I don't remember how it was like or exactly. I can't describe it, but 100% this happened, right? And I remember it. Okay, I'm like, how can you remember it but not exactly describe it? It's like, I just remember it, but I can't put my finger on the thing. But it's like recognizing something which but you don't know how you know it, right? The other person I met was somebody who actually became a Muslim. He was a non-Muslim, but he always remembered that as well. He always said, that's what made him a Muslim, right? Just seeing that verse in the Quran. He said, "Oh my God, yes, this happened. I remember it, Okay, how could this be come about, etc. And that's what led him to actually become a Muslim. And I think it's actually possible to remember it. It's a latent memory which is in all of us. It's possible to remember it. Spiritual exercises, purification of the self, real deep meditation. You can get back to it, I believe. But in the end, it's something sort of like we agreed to before coming, right? Does that mean that and we sort of like we knowing we'd forget as well, right? I mean, coming into this world, you know that you're going to become born a baby, not knowing anything, right? Some people apparently it seems like they keep that memory, but just not being able to remember it now doesn't mean that it isn't part of our past, that it doesn't affect us now. The women who respect no boundaries, not even God's boundaries, who are meant to destroy everything, including their children, have no mercy. Yes, you have women like that, women like that. But those ones is probably divorce. There's no point in doing any of those steps in the Quran. Those steps, that verse, it really can help and rectify things. If you understand them, you have to sort of just understand what's happening. Could you do a complete explanation of the video of verse 41 Al-Ma'idah? Verse 41. That's the one which we mentioned today, right? Yes, I think that would be a very good one to do. Right? Yeah, this one which it tells you a lot about the final days of the Prophet and the situation that he was in and what he was dealing with. Right? It does show the situation there. All right. I think I'll skip ahead down to the bottom, see if there's any questions here. Do people who die before the age of 40 have an excuse? What does the Quran say about it? This is an interesting one. I mean, I think we talked about that once. That there's a verse in the Quran which talks about the people that those who will be punished, some of them will be questioned. Did we not give you long enough life, so that those who could be admonished took admonition, and also warner came to you? Did we not do that for you? And then they're saying, okay, we did that. It's a rhetorical question, okay? And so, let me just pull out the verse. (25, 37). And so because of that, you have no excuse, okay? And so the converse of that is that somebody who doesn't live a long enough life does have an excuse, right? It's here, وَهُمْ يَسْتَرِخُونَ فِيهَا, and therein they shout. I mean, let me move Aubrey, it's difficult sometimes to read. Let's do go of Picthor. And they cry for help therein in the fire, basically, saying, our Lord, release us, we will do right, not the wrong we used to do. And this is none of the verses which tells you that it's all about actions, not belief. It doesn't say, رَبَّنَا أَخْرِجْنَا نُؤْمِنْ, oh Lord, get us out of here, we will believe, and we will not be disbelievers. It says, no, get us out of here, we will do righteousness. نَعْمَ صَالِحًا غَيْرَ الَّذِي كُنَّا, other than what we used to do. Right? So again, those who enter hell enter because of what they do, the actions. What's the response? The response is, أَوَلَمْ نُعَمِّرْكُمْ مَا يَتَذَكَّرُ فِيهِ مَنْ تَذَكَّرَ. Did we not grant you life long enough for him who reflected to reflect therein? وَجَاءَكُمُ النَّذِيرُ, and the warner came to you. Okay, and some say the warner here can be anything which will warn you, even like your gray hairs. I'm dying. When you start, your head starts to go gray. When your vigor departs from your body, you know that you're going to die soon. Okay, that's a warning. Okay, and then it says, okay, it's a rhetorical question that happened. We gave you that thing. So these people who are in hell, they were given that long life. It says فَذُوقُوا فَمَا لِلظَّالِمِينَ مِنْ أَنصَارٍ. So therefore, taste the punishment for the unjust, for the tyrants. There is no help. So the converse of that is that the people who didn't live a long enough life do have an excuse. They do have an excuse. What is long enough? Okay, that's not given, right? It could be, like you said, 40 years. I mean, 40 years is, in the Quran, it's mentioned as the time of your full strength, right? The time of your full strength is, you've had your full strength, maybe intellectually, physically, and so doesn't mean that somebody who dies before 40 is excused. I don't know. It could also mean that somebody who dies before 50, because I've mentioned this before, but I do think that there is a type of reincarnation. Okay, so this comes again from the evidence of past life memories in children. If you look that up, the University of Virginia has a lot of the DOPS, University of Virginia, Department of Perceptual Studies, has a lot of work done on that. So somebody who sort of dies without being tested enough, because the purpose, remember, of this dunya is to test you which of you is best in deeds. So somebody who has not sort of like, if that has not been fulfilled with them, what's going to happen? Okay, if they have not clearly on one side, landed on one side and the other, right? It's not going to be somebody who's like, oh, he's going to go to hell because he's sort of like, it's just a little bit bad than good. Okay, no, it has to be sort of like, it's a clear thing, right? That the fujjar are in jaheen and the muttaqeen and the abrar are in jannah. Okay, it's that delineation. So people will be tested until that is clear. They will have long enough life for that. So if you die before that is done, you could be sent back. I mean, you also see that in NDEs, right? Near-death experiences, where the person is told, some people are sort of like given a choice. You can either come back or not. And of course, we only hear about the ones who come back, right? But some are given no choice, like, no, you're not done yet. You have to go back, right? So let's say that happens to somebody whose body is no longer viable, right? Their body is, that's it, they're decapitated, right? Well, then where are they going to go back? They can't go back to that body, right? It's done. So that's where I think past life memories in children and things like this come into play. The people who would object to that will point out all of these verses where God is saying you can't go back, right? But all of those verses are directed at people who have already shown themselves to be fujjar. So they've said they've done the test and they've failed, right? And now they're asking to go back and do it again, and they're told no, right? All of those verses. I mean, and those are the only people who are going to want to go back anyway, right? The people who have sort of like, who see that they failed and their punishment awaits them, they're going to say, no, please let me go back. And it's like, no, you can't. Surah 75, verses 16 to 19 is central for anybody who's watching tonight. Very good. So anybody who sees this last part, check that out. So I think we'll leave it there, call it a night. Thank you so much for those who came on. I apologize. I only had 2 people. There were a few other people in the backstage waiting. So I might do this again, and just maybe tomorrow, day after tomorrow. But I promise I'll do another one soon, just to try to get those who are patiently waiting. Okay. So, Assalamu alaikum. Take care, and thank you again for joining me.